Good evening, everybody, and welcome to this program. Uh, my name is Ranjit Gadgir. I am the program director at Parisar. Obviously, when a person like Sujit passes away, somebody who has been in the public life for such a long time, and somebody who has worked on so many public projects, public policies, when a person like that goes, obviously it leaves a big void in the lives of a lot of people. And so obviously his life touched the lives of a lot of people, a lot of organizations, and he believed in a collaborative work, and which is why I think it is fitting that this memorial today is being co-organized by a lot of organizations who asked to be part of this program. You can see the names of the organizations who are co-hosts of this organization, and I think that is the right way to do a memorial for Sujit. Um, I'd like to acknowledge the people who are here today. Sujit's family, Vidya Patwardhan, and his daughters Lara and Amrita are present here today. We are obviously in the school Aksharnandan, which is sort of something that Vidya has set up and now is being run by Lara. Uh, all our Parisar, or many of our Parisar trustees are also present today. Dr. Vijay Patwardhan, Ravi Bhagwat, whom am I missing? Rajendra Bhai, Rajendra Ravi, who are all trustees. Of course, Vidya is also a trustee of Parisar, are also present today. I understand that Neelam Tai Gore will also be arriving shortly. So just mentioning her name. And also, of course, for us, it's really important and that the Parisar staff is also here today, along with what we call the Parisar extended family. So we really do think of ourselves as a family. So even those who have been with Parisar in the past but now are not with Parisar are also, many of them are also here today. Uh, as the banner says, we are calling it Reliving Sujit, which is really asking us to join in the energy, the thought, and the life of Sujit Patwardhan. So that's sort of the spirit with which we will be conducting the program today. Many of you perhaps have had a chance to look at the display, but Sujit was a multifaceted person, and Parisar and transport was just one part of his life and personality. And we have outside some of the paintings. He recently had an exhibition. We'll be hearing a little bit about that. He was, of course, a printer and a designer. Everybody knows that. Anybody who knew Sujit knew that about him. And so we also have certain book covers that he designed, which are put on display outside. Posters, even some really old ones that he designed for Narmada Bachao Andolan. And of course, all Parisar publications benefited from his direction and his design. And I think it really created an identity for the organization and many other organizations that he was a part of. There are also bags on display because he was really interested in calligraphy. So those bags are also on display, which he had done for Intac and EcoExist. And because I know that we may not, and we obviously won't have time to give everybody a chance to speak, we also have some cards. And so if people want to write their messages on them, then that sort of goes into our permanent memory of things that wanted to say about about Sujit. So don't despair if you didn't get a chance to come up here. We would love to hear what you felt about him in the cards, and please do deposit them with us. So with that, I will now proceed with the invitations to ask people to come up and speak about him. I'm going to first ask Rajendra Bhai Ravi, who is from the organization People's Resource Center. He is also a trustee of Parisar, but he was also a founding member of the Sustainable Urban Mobility Network, SUMNET, which is a national network of organizations working on mobility. There are many SUMNET members here today in the audience. And so let me call Rajendra Bhai to come up here and talk about him.
मुझे तो भरोसा नहीं हो रहा है कि सुजीत भाई हमारे बीच नहीं है, क्योंकि मैं 3 दिन से यहाँ पे आया हूँ और सिर्फ उनकी जो शारीरिक जो अनुपलब्धता है वही दिखती है कि वो मेरे साथ नहीं है। लेकिन उनकी हर जगह पे, जब भी मैं पुणे आता था तो वो हमें हर जगह पे ले जाके घुमाते थे। वो सिर्फ उनका, मेरा तो रिश्ता जो शुरुआत हुई वो ट्रांसपोर्ट से हुई, लेकिन फिर धीरे धीरे एक जीवंत शहर कैसे बन सकता है और वो ट्रांसपोर्ट से इतर और क्या क्या चीज़ें हो सकती है, इस पे काफ़ी गहरी चर्चा पिछले 2-2.5 दशकों से होती थी। हम लोग अलग अलग न सिर्फ प्रोजेक्ट के दौरान बल्कि आंदोलनों में, जुलूसों में, जलसों में, कभी इंटरनेशनल सेमिनार वर्कशॉप में मिलना जुलना होता था और लगता था कि जो जो वेवलेंथ है हम लोग का वो काफ़ी एक दूसरे को प्रभावित करता था। 17 तारीख की ही बात थी जब उनका कॉल मेरे पास गया और वो बोले कि यार तुम्हारा कॉल आया हुआ था, मैं ले नहीं पाया, सो बीच बीच में मैं फ़ोन नहीं उठाता हूँ। सो कोरोना काल में जो है हम लोग मिल नहीं पाए हैं, सिर्फ फ़ोन पे और जूम पे ये जो मिलना है इससे बहुत खलता है। सो ऐसा है कि तुम आ जाना। तो मैंने कहा कि ठीक है, अभी दीपावली वगैरह है, उसके बाद हम आते हैं तो थोड़ी लंबी बात करेंगे और आगे के बारे में सोचेंगे कि क्या करना है। बोले कि ठीक है, सो हम इंतज़ार करेंगे। फिर हम तैयारी कर ही रहे थे कि दीपावली वगैरह ख़त्म होगा, जाएंगे, फिर अचानक सूचना मिली कि वो बीमार हो गए। तो कुछ समझ में नहीं आया कि ये जो सब चीज़ें प्लान थी वो अचानक सब बिगड़ने कैसे लगा। हमें लगता है कि उनकी जो बहुमुखी व्यक्तित्व है और जो परिसर जो एक घेरा है, उन्होंने लगातार अपने घेरा को बढ़ाते गए वो, और वो इतनी बड़ी घेरा बन गई कि वो हमेशा तलाशते रहते थे कि उनके जैसा अच्छे लोग कहाँ कहाँ काम कर रहे हैं और उनसे कैसे दोस्ती हो सकती है, चाहे वो किसी भी दुनिया के इलाके में रहने वाले हों। और वो खुद भी पढ़ते थे, फिल्में देखते थे, अच्छे अच्छे जो डॉक्यूमेंट्री वगैरह है, और अपने दोस्तों को फॉरवर्ड करते रहते थे कि ये पढ़ने लायक है, इसको पढ़िए, बात करिए। तो एक जिंदा दिल इंसान, बेहतरीन दोस्त वो रहे हैं। और हमें लगता है कि हमें उनके जो भी हमारे उनके जो साझे कंसर्न है, साझे जो उन्होंने विरासत जो छोड़ी है, उसको आगे लेके जाना ही उनकी सबसे अच्छी याद करने जैसा है। और हमें लग रहा है कि उन्होंने एक पीढ़ी छोड़ी है, एक युवाओं की एक नई पीढ़ी छोड़ी है अलग अलग कालखंड में, जो उनसे आते थे, सीखते थे, और सीख करके फिर वो कहीं दूसरे चले जाते थे। और फिर जब उनको ज़रूरत पड़ता था, कोई कन्फ्यूजन होता था, कोई दिक्कत होती थी, तो फिर वो उनसे बात करके समाधान करते थे। तो वो पीढ़ी अब पूरे देश में फैली है और उनके जो भी एक सपने रहे हैं बेहतर शहर का, बेहतर समाज का बनाने का, वो हम लोग सब मिल करके आगे ले जाएंगे। यही सबसे अच्छी यादगार होगी उनकी। शुक्रिया, धन्यवाद।
धन्यवाद राजेंद्र भाई। और जिस पीढ़ी की आपने बात की, उनके कई मैसेजेस भी हमको आए हैं और उनमें से कई युवा जो है यहाँ पे आज हमारे साथ इस ऑडियंस में भी है, तो उसकी गवाही हमारे सामने है। अब मैं Bittu Sehgal, I invite Bittu Sehgal to please come up to the stage and give his memorial about Sujit. Bittu is the, let me just read these things carefully, the founder of Sanctuary Nature Foundation, the editor of the Sanctuary Asia India, and more importantly, he was one of the speakers at the Parisar annual lecture, which used to be an old tradition of Parisar, when they invited people who were the experts in the field to try and create that awareness about the environment. So in 1992, he gave the Parisar annual lecture, which is available also outside in a printed format on the environment and wildlife.
What have you done? Called us all together. You know, the thing with Sujit was that it wasn't just a question of age. He used to get along with our kids. Our kids used to be interested in what he's got to say. Look at the diversity of people over here. And I must say about myself, I was never an editor. I was not born an editor. I started a magazine with no business plan, no nothing. And it was running along. Then we said we'll start Cub magazine also. And I bit off much more than I could chew. And every once in a while when I was in any kind of real trouble with Vidya, I would just tell Sujit, "Main kya karu?" He said, "Tu karte ja." At one point in time, for a period of time, he said, "You just send the paper. I'll print the magazine for you. Where's the problem? I can't buy the paper for you, but I'll print it for you." But we eventually paid for everything. The thing is, he made everything easy for people. He made it possible for us. Sujit was like glue for everybody. Diverse people were joined through him in so many different ways. And there was never I have never seen Sujit at any time ever morose. "Hi, meri kismat, kal ko ye karna hai." Never. The biggest problems would be there, and he would smile and he would explain and he would say, "Do what we can do and the rest will happen." Almost like he wrote the Gita, And there was more than just that. Narmada Bachao Andolan was in a sense like an umbrella, and it was like a womb, and it nurtured so many people. And Sujit was just one of those people who just made one pillar stand. I mean, we've got Ashish here, we've got Smitu. I'm remembering so many people that somehow or the other we've gone away from. And thank you, Sujit, for bringing us together. But there was one thing that stayed with me about Sujit, when Teddy Goldsmith had come down to Bombay, to the British Council, the editor of The Ecologist. And in just passing, Teddy said that, "Look, we should actually publish The Ecologist from India as well." They were doing it in different places. Teddy was Teddy. And when I mentioned this to Sujit, so he says, "What's the problem?" So I said, "You know what the problem is. I can barely manage 2 magazines. Just send it over here, print it." So Sujit did one thing that I tell children to do, and I tell everybody else who says, "What can I do?" You do what you are best at. Just do what you are best at, and if you have the right attitude and you have an open enough mind, you will be able to add your strength to things. Somebody will be the karta dharta of something, and all he needs is a little bit of help. Sujit was like the neurons, that went through. He would make one person speak to the other, and if 2 people were not fighting, he would do his guspus over here, guspus over there, and suddenly you'd find them having a cup of tea together. He was somebody who joined us. And if ever, Ashish, I feel the loss of Sujit now, I think in terms of what problems we had then, which we thought were insurmountable problems. Arey, wo to angdai bhi nahi thi compared to what we are going through now. And all these were another thing, Joe, I mean, Lara, Amrita, what shall I say? I can just say to you right now, I feel that as far as Sujit is concerned, he has gone nowhere. You can't see him, you can't feel him, you can't touch him, but on all our issues right now, I personally take strength from the fact that irrespective of what the gravity of the problem is, if you go around morose and fighting and sad and this and that, not only do you destroy your own inner strength, you sap other people's strength. And that was one thing that Sujit did. He gave everybody strength. The more strength he gave, the more strength he seemed to have. And I know there's only 4 or 5 minutes, and I know that I should stop right now, and I don't feel like stopping. I would like to carry on talking about Sujit. I will promise this audience over here that irrespective of anything, the one lasting message of his was unite, get together. You can't do things on your own. If you think you can do things on your own, titar vitar ho jaoge. In his own way, he would say the same thing, and he used his life, I think, to bring people together. And look, there's one thing that I discovered very much later about Sujit, We both love jazz in a way. I never spoke to him over jazz on all our Narmada Bachao Andolan things and all our meetings and all our things. We never spoke about jazz, and I can't understand. Here is this man. I've lived my life with, the last person we spoke about was John Coltrane, And anyway, that was Sujit. He loved jazz. I love jazz. He loved life. I love life. And I think that each one of us will have similar commonalities. And I miss Sujit. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Yeah, I think it's okay to clap because I think we are enjoying this reliving of Sujit and the energy that he brought. So I think we can certainly do that. And thanks for pointing out the fact that he was the glue, because I think all of us experienced that. I mean, both in Pune and in national networks and otherwise also. So thank you for those words, Bittu. I would now like to ask Debbie Goenka to come. He's the executive trustee of the Conservation Action Trust. And we return the favor. Sujit is a trustee on the Conservation Action Trust, and he was one of the first people who called me and said, I want to come, I want to speak about Sujit. When are we co-hosting something? And CAT was the first organization that added its name to the list of co-hosts. Please, Debbie.
I really don't know what to say. I've got so much to say and so little time to say it. I met Sujit on a one-to-one interaction, I think, almost 40 years ago in Mahabaleshwar, when he was on the Mahabaleshwar Panchgani Monitoring Committee. And I was really very impressed by his depth of knowledge and his commitment and so on. And also what was very impressive was his camera and his array of lenses. And in those days, getting hold of any kind of equipment was so difficult. And he showed me some of his photographs. I was very, very impressed with the kind of photographs he took. A few years ago, we invited him to join the board of Conservation Action Trust. And given the fact that we are involved in so many controversial issues, I thought he would take the easy way out and refuse. But much to my pleasant surprise, he willingly said yes, there's absolutely no problem. And I must tell you, I met him on October 12th this year when I was in Pune last. I was able to spend half an hour with him at his house. And I had some very, very serious issues to discuss with him about what is happening to the NGO sector and the way the government is cracking down and so on and so forth. And even at that point of time, he stood firm. He said, nothing doing. We will carry on with our work. There is no need for us to back down. Whatever will happen, will happen. And he promised me his support no matter what happens. So I'm really a great honor, a great privilege to have worked with him. And coming back to transportation issues, we filed a case in the Bombay High Court about vehicular pollution in Mumbai. And I used to call him up very often and get his views and advice and so on and so forth. And I must say that at every point of time, Sujit had some ideas to offer, something out of the box which hadn't occurred to us. And I really, really found all those interactions very, very helpful. And I also do have a lot to say, but I actually know that there's such a huge number of people wanting to speak. So let me end by saying that Vidyatai, Amrita, Sujit will always remain in our hearts and minds, and whatever ideas he has planted, I think will go on and live on forever. Thank you.
Thank you, Debbie. And you're right, his ability to provide that wider perspective is, I think, something that we're really going to miss. Sometimes one is so blinkered that he was the one who helped expand that point of view. I now call Sadhana Dadhich to come. She's the founder member of Nari Samata Manch, an integral part of the National Alliance of People's Movement, and especially crucial in the expansion of Narmada Bachao Andolan in Maharashtra. And as I mentioned, there's a wonderful poster that Sujit helped design.
सुजितच्या कुटुंबाची आणि माझ्या कुटुंब म्हणून आमची खूप पिढ्यानपिढ्याची जुनी ओळख आहे. पण तसं बघितलं तर आपण कामातनंच आपल्या खऱ्या ओळखी आणि नाती तयार होतात. तसं माझं झालं. नर्मदा बचाव आंदोलनाच्या वेळेला जेव्हा पुणे शहरात आम्ही एका समाजवादी गटातून येतो म्हणून मी सांगते की एक त्या काळातली समाजमान्य भूमिका होती, आधी पुनर्वसन मग धरण, ती सोडून आम्ही एकदम धरणच नको आणि पुनर्वसनाचा तो प्रश्नच नाही पुढचा अशी भूमिका घेतली. त्यावेळेला एक धाडसी भूमिका घेणाऱ्यांच्यात परिसरचा आम्हाला पूर्ण पाठिंबा राहिला आणि त्याच्यात अर्थातच सुजित त्याच्या सगळ्या गडगडाटी आवाजासह पाठिंबा देण्यात राहिला. हा गडगडाटी आवाज हा अनेकांना त्याचा स्मरणात राहील आणि त्या गडगडाटात आम्ही खूप भिजलेले आहोत, कधी कधी प्रेमाने आणि रागावलेले आहोत. सुजितच्याबद्दल तर इथे सांगताना मला असं म्हटलं पाहिजे की नर्मदा बचाव आंदोलनाचे सर्व महत्त्वाचे पुण्यातले कार्यक्रम हे सुजितच्या एका प्रकारे सल्ल्याने, कधीकधी त्यांनी दिलेल्या सूचनांनी, कधीकधी त्याच्या रुसण्याने पण संपन्न झालेले आहेत. आणि आमची सर्व प्रकाशनं म्हणजे नर्मदा बचाव आंदोलनाला समर्थन देणारी मला वाटतं 4-5 पुस्तकं तरी मुद्रामध्येच झाली. आणि आमची पत्रकं हा सुद्धा एक खूप चांगला, तेव्हा मला पूर्वी आपण पत्रकं कशी निळा पिवळा कागद अशी काहीतरी जरा अशीच असायची, पण परिसरच्यामुळे आणि त्या दोस्तीमुळे आणि अर्थात त्याच्या कमिटमेंटमुळे मला जरा थरथरायलाच होत आहे. तर आमची पत्रकं ही मुद्रामधल्या यायची, म्हणजे तुम्हाला सगळ्यांना त्याची गुणवत्ता माहिती आहे आणि अशी हातात घेऊन माणसाला वाचावीशी वाटायची. आम्ही तेव्हा नाही अजून नाही आम्ही तेव्हा असं म्हणायचो, तासाला 1000 पत्रकं आम्ही अलका चौकात वाटलेली आहेत आणि हा आमचा रेट होता. किती तास उभं राहायचं तेवढी पत्रकं आपल्या हातात असली पाहिजे. आणि आम्ही बघायचो किती पत्रकं खाली पडली आहेत तर तीही वेचायचो, पण अगदी नगण्य पत्रकं तेव्हा खाली पडलेली असायची. सुजित हा एक मोठी आमची शिवाजी नगर असं एक सदाशिवपेठेतली एक मोठ्या पटांगणात बैठक झाली होती आणि सुजित त्याचा अध्यक्ष होता. तेव्हा असं जरा सगळ्यांनाच हे झालं होतं की अरे नर्मदा बचाव आंदोलनासाठी सुजित पटवर्धन पण आहेत, म्हणजे पर्यावरणवाद्यांच्या विषयी सॉरी बिट्टू अशी एक भूमिका होती की पोपट वाचवणारे वाघ वाचवणारे अशी. तेव्हा ती क्रॉस करून घेतली. ऑफकोर्स बिट्टूचं त्याच्यात खूप मोठं कॉन्ट्रीब्युशन आहे, पण त्यावेळची मी एक गंमत म्हणून सांगते. तेव्हा परिसरच्या एका संपूर्ण खल होण्याची एक आहे ना, परिसर वार्तामध्ये जे काही छापून यायचे लेख, पळशीकर, नेने, प्राध्यापक बापट, ही सगळी मंडळी जेव्हा आम्ही खल करत असो आमच्या भूमिकांच्यावर आणि पर्यावरणवादाच्या बाबत खूप सखोल चिंतन होत असं. सुजित आणि वाहतुकीचा प्रश्न हा तर म्हणजे विद्यास कधी त्याला ट्रॅफिक पटवर्धन असं पण म्हणत असेल आणि तो तर गाजलेलाच आहे. आमचा जो जनआंदोलनाचा राष्ट्रीय समन्वय आहे त्यांनी पुष्कळ ठिकाणी सुजितनी तयार केलेलं ट्रॅफिक संदर्भातलं प्रदर्शन रस्ती लावलेलं होतं आणि त्याचे सर्वे पण घेतलेले होते. हा आमच्या बाजूने एक केलेला एक चांगला प्रकार होता. पण नर्मदा बचाव आंदोलनाच्या बरोबरीनेच NAPMची आमचं जे मासिक आहे आंदोलन ते जवळजवळ 19 वर्ष मुद्राबद्ध त्याची छपाई झालेली आहे आणि आमची सर्व पोस्टर्स ही मुद्राची आहे. आज इथे सुजितला आठवताना मी मुद्दाम हा बिल्ला घालत आले. तो त्या वाहतूक प्रश्न असो, लवासाचा आमचा प्रश्न असो, लवासामध्ये तो एक पिटिशनर पण होता. ती केस अजून रेंगाळे इथे सांगायला नको, पण सतत साथ देणारा असा सुजित होता. आणि आत्ता तर पुण्यात येऊ घातलेली जी अनेक संकटं होती तेव्हा एक्सप्रेस हायवेच्या बरोबरीने तेव्हाही आम्ही काम केलं. नंतर नदी पात्रातनं जाणारा रस्ता असो आणि अगदी अलीकडे टेकडीतनं बोगदे जे येऊ घातलेले तो प्रश्न असो. इथे मुद्दाम अशोक दातार आले तेव्हा मला आठवत आहे की अशोक आला की सुद्धा ट्रॅफिकवर सुजितच्या बरोबरीने खूप चर्चा होत असत आणि मला अजूनही अशोकचं एक वाक्य खूप आठवतं. अशोक तुझी परवानगी घेऊन सांगते की मुंबईत सगळ्यांना झोपडपट्ट्या दिसतात आणि त्या आपल्या जवळ नको असं वाटतं. पण मुंबईत पार्किंगसाठी ज्या कार एवढ्या लाईनीत उभे आहेत त्यातली प्रत्येक कार ही झोपडीच्या आकाराची आहे, पण ती काही तुम्हाला चालते आणि हे चालत नाही. अशा पद्धतीने तो मांडणी करत होता. ते आज मला अशोक इथे आल्यामुळे जास्त आठवलं. सुजितनी जी आमची पोस्टर केली ती तिकडे लावलेली आहेत का? हां. आणि हा जो लोगो आहे त्याच्याविषयी आता मी शेवटचं बोलून थांबते, कारण मला नाही तर बोलवणारच नाही. हा लोगो जर तुम्ही पाहिलात तर तो कसा आहे, पूर्वी आमचे लोगो म्हणजे असा जरा लाल काळा रंग असे जरा भडक रंग असायचे, पण हा लोगो आकाशी रंगाचा आहे. एक प्रगल्भता, त्या शांतपणा त्या रंगात आहे. नदीचं वाहणारं पाणी आहे. आणि तुम्ही ही जी माणसं पाहिलीत तर ती आदिवासी परंपरेत खांद्यावर हात टाकून नृत्य करतात की नाही, तशी ती आहेत. म्हणजे एका बाजूला मैत्री तर आहेच, भक्कम निर्धार आहे. त्यांनी कुठलेही अवजार नाही हातात घेतलेलं. हत्यार ते दूरच, आमच्या ह्याच्यात कुठलेही अवजार हातात नाही घेतलेलं. एक आपलं अस्तित्व पणाला लावलेली ही माणसं आहेत. म्हणून मला तो लोगो फार आवडतो. आणि सुजितने तो किती कल्पकतेने बनवला असेल याचं स्मरण होतं. सुजितच्या आठवणीतच राहणं मी पसंत करेन. तेव्हा इथेच थांबते.
नीलमताई गोरे यांना आमच्यासारखे जे नवीन लोक आहेत त्यांना फक्त आम्ही एक पॉलिटिशियन म्हणून ओळखतो, पण सुजितमुळे लक्षात आलं की त्यांची एक वेगळी ओळख आहे. आणि कधीही आता लेटेस्ट आम्ही एक बस कॅम्पेन काढली होती, लाख को 50 नावाची कॅम्पेन. सुजितने फोन केला, म्हणजे अशा सुजितच्या ओळखी होत्या ह्याचं आम्हाला खूप कौतुक वाटायचं. आणि लगेचच नीलमताईंनी आम्हाला बोलवून घेतलं आणि त्याच्यावरती आम्ही खूप सविस्तर चर्चा केली. आणि बाकीचं त्या सांगतीलच. नीलम.
सगळ्यात प्रथम सुजितला भावपूर्ण आदरांजली व्यक्त करते. तसं ज्यावेळेला पुण्यात कामाला आम्ही सुरुवात केली, म्हणजे दलित चळवळ, तसंच स्त्री आधार केंद्र, नारी समता मंच या सगळ्या कामामध्ये विद्युत भागवत, त्याच्यानंतर रवी भागवत, विद्या, सुजित हे अगदी संघटना सुरू करताना कुठे ना कुठे कार्यक्रमांना, बैठकांना किंवा काही समान कार्यक्रम असायचे, बाबा आढावांचे, तिथे भेट झालेली होती. त्याच्यानंतर मुद्राचा उल्लेख साधनाने केला, त्याच्यातसुद्धा काही नारी समता मंचाची प्रकाशनं छापून घेतलेली मला आठवत आहे. आणि त्यावेळेला त्याचा तो प्रेस वगैरे पाहिल्यावरती अत्यंत कलात्मक दृष्टी आणि त्याचबरोबर त्याचा अभ्यास या सगळ्यामुळे कायम त्याची ओळख लक्षात राहिलेली होती. परंतु अत्यंत मधल्या काळामध्ये बऱ्याच घटना घडल्या आणि त्याच्यानंतर मग विधान परिषदेत आमदार म्हणून काम करत असताना परत एकदा सुजितची ओळख पर्यावरणाच्या प्रश्नाच्या निमित्ताने झाली. आणि सगळ्यांची ओळख होती, ऐकून होते, वाचत होते, परिसरचं काम माहिती होतं. पुण्यामध्ये काम करणाऱ्या ज्या पर्यावरणवादी संघटना आहेत त्यांच्यापैकी काही जण नर्मदा बचावचंही काम करत होते. आणि पुण्यामध्ये टेकड्यांचा प्रश्न ज्या वेळेला आला की टेकड्यांच्या वरती BDP चे झोन असावेत की नाही, किंवा तिथे बांधकामाला परवानगी दिली जाण्याची विचार सुरुवात झाला, त्यावेळेला जवळजवळ पुणे शहर असं 2 भागामध्ये विभागलं गेलं. आणि त्यात मोठ्या प्रमाणात, म्हणजे मला जे स्मरतं आहे त्याप्रमाणे 78,000 नागरिकांनी हरकती नोंदवल्या की आम्हाला टेकड्या वाचवायच्या आहेत आणि म्हणून. आणि मग या सगळ्या कामामध्ये त्यावेळेला तर उद्धवजी ठाकरे काय मुख्यमंत्री वगैरे नव्हते, पण तो प्रश्न समोर आल्यावर त्यांनी असं म्हणाले की नाही, मला असं वाटतं की त्या प्रश्नामध्ये तुम्ही जास्त काम करायला पाहिजे. आणि त्यानंतर मग विधानमंडळामध्ये अनेक वेळेला मी या प्रश्नावरती आवाज उठवला. त्याच्या बैठका आपले मैत्रिणी सगळ्या गोखले आणि या सर्वजणींनी त्यांनी अनेक कार्यक्रमात बोलावलं. आणि प्रत्येक वेळेला वाहतुकीच्या प्रश्नावरती ज्या वेळेला मुद्दा यायचा त्यावेळेला असं वाटायचं की परिसरच्याकडून अजून काही समजून घेतलं पाहिजे. आणि खूप अभ्यासपूर्ण अशी मांडणी सुजित करत होता. त्याचं मांडणी करत असताना खूप, म्हणजे तो मी असं म्हणेन की तज्ज्ञाबरोबर कार्यकर्ताच झालेला होता. फक्त तज्ज्ञ नव्हता, तर कार्यकर्ता होता. त्याचबरोबर राजकारणातल्या लोकांना बऱ्याच वेळेला ऐकून घेण्याची सवय राहिलेली नसते. थोडीफार मी सवय ठेवली आहे ती जागृत, त्याच्यामुळे त्याचं म्हणण्यातून बरंचसं काही शिकायला मिळालं, ऐकून घेता आलं. आणि त्यानंतर अनिल परब यांच्याकडे आम्ही थोडी बैठकीचाही प्रयत्न केला. परिवहनचे जे सचिव आहेत त्यांच्याबरोबर पाठपुरावा केला आणि कल्पना सगळी ती चांगली वाटत होती, परंतु नंतर त्याच्यामधून फार वेगाने काही करता आलं नाही, कारण पुणे महानगरपालिका एक स्वतंत्र यानाप्रमाणे त्यांचं काम चाललेलं असतं. ते काही फार कोणासाठी थांबतात असं मला वाटत नाही. आणि त्याचबरोबर साधारणपणे म्हणजे एक वस्तुस्थिती आहे की पालकमंत्री जे म्हणतील त्या पद्धतीने पुणे महापालिकेत निर्णय होतात. त्याच्यामध्ये चांगलं का वाईट याची चर्चा होऊ शकते, परंतु नागरिकांच्या हरकती असतील किंवा नागरिकांचं जे म्हणणं आहे त्याच्यामध्ये पुण्यातल्या नागरिकांच्या म्हणण्यानुसार महानगरपालिकेने जे निर्णय घेतले किंवा त्यांना घ्यावे लागले, भाग पडले, त्याच्यामध्ये अर्थातच ह्या टेकड्या वाचवण्याचा प्रश्न असेल, ज्यांचा साधनाने परत उल्लेख केला, नदीपात्रामधल्या बांधकामाचे विषय असतील, कचऱ्याच्या संदर्भात नदीच्या आक्रमणाबद्दल तर जेवढं बोलावं तेवढं थोडं आहे, कारण इतक्या मजुरांचा मृत्यू होऊनसुद्धा त्या रामनदीच्या पात्राच्या वरती मी स्वतः लक्षवेधी लावली होती, पण प्रत्यक्षामध्ये काही त्याची अंमलबजावणी होत नाही असं वारंवार लक्षात आलं. महाबळेश्वरच्या संदर्भातल्या सुद्धा प्रदूषणाच्या समितीवरती तो स्वतः होता आणि तिथे मात्र मला आठवते की 2006-07च्या सुमाराला विधिमंडळामध्ये मी ती लक्षवेधी घेतली आणि तिथे उत्तर जे आलं समोर त्याच्यात असं दिसलं होतं, तुमच्यापैकी अनेकांना कल्पना असेल, उत्तरात असं म्हटलेलं होतं की जो सांडपाणी आहे सगळं महाबळेश्वरमधलं ते हॉटेल्सनी कुठलीही त्याच्यासाठी व्यवस्था केलेली नाही आणि ते सगळं सांडपाणी वेण्णा लेकमध्ये सोडतात. ते ऐकल्यावरती अर्थातच सगळ्यांना म्हणजे काहींना जे साताऱ्याचे आमदार होते त्यांना कल्पना होती, पण बाकीच्यांना अर्थातच खूप धक्का बसला. आणि त्याच्यानंतर माझ्या माहितीप्रमाणे या कमिटीमुळे आणि सरकारच्या थोड्या प्रयत्नामुळे महाबळेश्वरमध्ये संपूर्ण प्रत्येक हॉटेलला सांडपाणी प्रक्रिया केल्याशिवाय बांधकामाला परवानगी मिळणार नाही अशा पद्धतीने निर्णय सरकारने घेतला. त्याच्यानंतर महाबळेश्वर आणि पाचगणी दोन्हीकडे घनकचरा व्यवस्थापनावरती सुद्धा तिथल्या सरपंच, नगरपालिका अध्यक्ष यांनी एकत्र येऊन काम केलं आणि त्या दोन्ही नगरपालिकांना देशामध्ये पर्यावरणाच्या संदर्भात सगळ्या प्लास्टिकमुक्त नगरपालिका असा त्यांना पुरस्कार मिळाला. अर्थात नंतर ते चालू असताना त्याच्यात काही अडचणी आहेत, पण ती जी एक भावना होती, तो एक विचार होता, तो कुठेतरी पुढे गेला. प्लास्टिक बंदीच्या संदर्भात सुद्धा राज्य सरकारने निर्णय घेतलेला आहे आणि शाश्वत विकास उद्दिष्टांच्यावर जेव्हा आता COP27 आहे किंवा इतरत्र सगळीकडे मोठ्या प्रमाणात विषय आणि ज्याला आपण म्हणतो द्वंद्व अनेक बाबतीमध्ये, केंद्र सरकारची भूमिका वेगळी, राज्य सरकारची वेगळी, सामाजिक संघटनांची वेगळी आणि तरीही कार्बनमुक्त पुणे याच्यासारखे विषय जेव्हा परत परत येत आहेत त्याच्यामध्ये सुजितची अनुपस्थिती सातत्याने जाणवेल. आणि त्याचबरोबर एक ज्याला आपण म्हणू की माणसाचं पॅशन किंवा अगदी संपूर्णपणे बांधिलकी एखाद्या विषयाला वाहून घेतलं की त्याचा आपोआपच सगळ्यांना बरोबर प्रवास सुरू होतो आणि त्यामध्ये ते खूप चांगले सहकारी सगळे आपण त्याच्याबरोबर काम केलेलं आहे. आणि ज्या दिवशी त्याचं निधन झालं त्या दिवशी मी बाहेरगावी होते, परंतु नंतर परत तुम्हाला सगळ्यांना भेटण्याची संधी मिळाली. अनेक प्रश्न असे आहेत, मग त्याच्यामध्ये लाँग टर्म प्रमाणामध्ये त्याच्यात मर्यादा आहेत खूप, पण काहीच होत नाही असं मला वाटत नाही. मला स्वतःला असं वाटतं की ज्यांचा आवाज आहे, ज्यांना बोलायची इच्छा आहे, ते धाडसी आहेत, ज्यांनी कुठे मांडायचं याच्याबद्दल त्यांच्यावर दबाव येत नाही, अशा माणसांची शक्ती खूप मोठी असते आणि तशा प्रकारचे अनेक जणं मला इथे सभागृहात बसलेले दिसत आहेत. आणि असे फार थोडे लोक असतात की उपसभापती म्हणून जेव्हा माझ्यावर काम करायची वेळ येते त्यावेळेला यांनी बोलू दिलं तर काय बोलतील अशी भीती वाटत नाही कोणाबद्दलच, इथे असलेल्या लोकांबद्दल. याचं कारण असं की जे बोलतील ते निसर्गाच्या आणि समाजाच्या आणि माणुसकीच्या हिताचं बोलतील, अशा प्रकारचे सगळे आपण कार्यकर्ते आणि सहकारी इथे जमलेले आहात. आपण इथे मला 2 शब्द मांडण्याची संधी दिली. त्यांनी जे प्रश्न घेतले होते त्या प्रश्नांचा पाठपुरावा, मग तो शिक्षण विभागातला असेल किंवा आदिवासींच्या प्रश्नावरचा असेल, पर्यावरणाच्या संदर्भात असेल, त्याच्यावरती तुम्ही माझ्याकडे आलेली आहेस, पूर्वी भेटलेलो आहे, तर आपण त्याच्यावरती पाठपुरावा करू. अर्थात तेव्हा मी आमदार होते, अजून मला तर थोडे अधिकार आहेत, त्यामुळे मी सूचना किंवा विनंती न करता काही बाबतीत निर्देश पण देऊ शकते सरकारला, तर तो मी जरूर ते काम करायचा प्रयत्न करीन. हीच माझी आदरांजली आहे.
So Sujit didn't really see people in their political color. He sort of saw them as people. And the 3 things that she mentioned, that the passion that Sujit had, it sort of really broke across barriers. It didn't matter whom we were talking to. And the perseverance is another thing that she talked about, the passion and the perseverance and the optimism, because often it is true that we are often very disappointed, frustrated, and so on and so forth. And Bittu talked about that, and I think Neelam Taigore also mentioned that that optimism is something that can really carry you through, and you desperately need it from time to time. Bittu mentioned jazz, and we've also said that Sujit was a multifaceted person. Traffic and transportation was not his only hue and color. And so I now call Arvind Kher to come up and talk about Sujit's love for jazz. And the Pune Jazz Club is something that we often heard about from Sujit. And Mr. Kher is also a member of the Jazz Club, and so he will share some experiences from that. Yes.
Hi. So basically, I met Sujit because of jazz. So I was new into town. This was late 90s, and there was this thing called the Pune Jazz Club, and somebody said, you should go. So I went. And, there was some music playing and some stuff happening, and all that was good. But after the show, so to speak, there were little conversations taking place here and there. And one of the conversations, there was this animated guy, bright eyes, beard, hair, pouch, and he was talking. So I said, hey, I want to go and listen to this guy. And then I went there, I was listening, and he was saying some interesting stuff, and there was things I didn't know because I was new to jazz also. And so I kind of interrupted his conversation and to ask a question, and I thought he would say, Tukon. But no, he turned around, he answered my question, he gave me whatever I wanted to know. And then I said, hey, I want to become this man's friend. Okay, and he's such a friendly guy, it's very easy to become his friend. And so over the years, it's been like more than 20 years now that I've known him, we became friends. And, people talk about, I think you mentioned John Coltrane, right? And so there was a little circle, he had multiple circles, and, we were in one of them. And in this little circle, we used to call him Sujit Coltrane. Yeah, okay. But the funny thing is that although he was known more by this thing, there were a lot of artists that he was into that a lot of us had not heard of. I mean, I had never heard of Charles Lloyd, and he was really into Charles Lloyd. So then I started listening to Charles Lloyd. Yeah, he was really into Keith Jarrett. So okay, chalo, let's listen to some Keith Jarrett stuff. Okay, so it was, the thing about Sujit is to be enthusiastic is one thing, but without trying to be able to transfer your enthusiasm to the other person is something that happened it happened to me. Okay, whatever he was enthusiastic, so I became enthusiastic about Parisar. I mean, I care about the environment in general, I agree, but to really start feeling a little differently about it and thinking, hey, maybe one should actually participate and do something, that was one thing. So likewise about jazz. So a couple of incidents that I want to just talk about. One happened at his place, Yamuna, and the other happened at my place. So at his place, I was there for some reason, I'm not sure what it was, and we were talking about something, and there was some stuff playing in the background. And it was free jazz. I think it was either Eric Dolphy or Ornette Coleman. To the average person, it sounded like cacophony. Okay, and to me also, it sounded. Then I'm turning to Sujit and saying, "Ye kya hai yaar?" So then he says, "Just listen, yaar. Okay, don't make that the focus of. Let's talk. Let it just enter your mind. You're looking for melody. You're looking for harmony. You're looking for rhythm." He's saying no. So then I think he mentioned Osho, and he says Osho talks about fingers, right? Everybody knows the fingers, but who talks about the gaps? So he says, these are the gaps, okay? There is melody in this, there is harmony in it, there is rhythm in it, but you won't hear it now. So I said, okay. And then actually later that night, that music was still going around in my head. And I'm like, okay, there's melody, okay, there's harmony, okay. So I kind of got that, okay. And then next morning I said, nahi, ye Eric Dolphy ka record to lena hai. Okay. So that was first incident. The second incident was something that I actually knew. So there's this famous album, Kind of Blue, by Miles Davis. Okay, everybody has heard it. People who don't know jazz also, and I didn't know jazz much, I've also heard it. So Sujit said, "Chalo, one day let's listen to Kind of Blue. Okay, let's spend 2 hours listening to Kind of Blue." And I'm thinking like Kind of Blue is only 45 minutes. 2 घंटा क्या करेंगे? She says, "No, let's meet and let's listen." Okay, so somebody brings along this CD of Kind of Blue, and we are sitting at my place. My stereo is not that good, but Kind of Blue is very nice, so it sounds good. Okay, so Sujit brings a book called The Making of Kind of Blue. Yeah, and so there's about 10, 15 of us sitting there, and he brings out this book and he starts reading from the book, and then we play the first song. Then he reads some more paragraphs from here and there, then we play the second song. And throughout the thing, the book is explaining the LP. And this man is explaining the book. Okay? And it was the most amazing 2 hours I have ever spent. I mean, jazz club used to be nice. We used to listen to nice music. We used to have nice conversations. But these 2 hours where he explained to us how the guy wrote the book about the making of the album, it was the most freaked out experience that I have ever had. And nobody will ever be able to hear that album again the same way after listening to Sujit. Okay, so I don't know how to describe it also. Meaning this quality that a person has to just transfer things to other people, yeah, and to get them into something that he's into, like amazing. Anyway, so I guess, officially on the PMC records, Sujit has passed, yeah, but in real life, so to speak, yeah, he's still with us, right? Okay, thanks. Long live Sujit. Yeah.
Boy, that was really powerful, because I don't want to even try and express that, because it was just, I think, in its purest form. We will now sort of take a little break from the personal memories and show a short film using an assortment of photos. We had reached out to people and asked them to share those photos, and so we're going to share that small clip with you.
सबद अनाहद भोगी अवधूता युगन युगन हम योगी योगी युगन युगन हम योगी सभी ठोर जमात हमारी जमात हमारी सब ही ठोर पर मेरा मेला 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 हम सब हम सब सब है हम है बहुरी अकेला अवधूता युगन युगन हम योगी योगी युगन युगन हम ही सिद्ध समाधि हम ही समाधि हम ही हम मौनी हम बोले 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 रूप स्वरूप युगन युगन हम
फैली हुई है सपनों की बाहें, आजा चल दे कहीं दूर। वही मेरी मंजिल वही तेरी राहें, आजा चल दे कहीं दूर। फैली हुई है सपनों की बाहें, आजा चल दे कहीं दूर। वही मेरी मंजिल वही तेरी राहें, आजा चल दे कहीं दूर। ऊदी घटा के साए तले छुप जाए, धुंधली फिजा में कुछ खोए कुछ पाए। सांसों की लय पर कोई ऐसी धुन गाए, दे दे जो दिल को दिल की पनाहें, आजा चल दे कहीं दूर। फैली हुई है सपनों की बाहें, आजा चल दे कहीं दूर। झूला धनक का धीरे धीरे हम झूले, अंबर तो क्या है तारों के भी लब झूले। मस्ती में झूमे और सभी गम भूले, देखे न पीछे मुड़ के निगाहें, आजा चल दे कहीं दूर। फैली हुई है सपनों की बाहें, आजा चल दे कहीं दूर। वही मेरी मंजिल वही तेरी राहें, आजा चल दे कहीं दूर।
Man, so many memories. The next person that I'm going to call up is Anita. I'm not going to even try and attempt to introduce her. I think her association with Sujit goes far beyond that. Anita?
म्हणजे मी त्याला पहिल्यांदा 1967 साली भेटले. विद्या आणि मी त्यावेळेला मैत्रिणी होतो कॉलेजमधल्या, आणि मला वाटतं आम्ही दोघी त्याला एकाच वेळेला भेटलो, कारण तो इंग्लंडहून परत आला होता. आणि त्याचे काका आणि माझे वडील हे खास मित्र होते, म्हणून मग ते पमाच्या पुतण्याची ओळख करून दिली माझी. आणि देन वी हिट इट ऑफ. आय डोंट नो हाऊ, काय झालं माहिती नाही, पण वी जस्ट गॉट अलॉंग व्हेरी वेल. आमचा मोठा ग्रुप होता. So we had a lot of fun, parties, going to the engineering college, regatta, boating, all kinds of fun things we did. And then we also enjoyed working together, which is quite surprising actually, karan you may not hit it off on the other things that you do. We also fought a lot, Sujit and I, but we had a lot of things in common. आणि सगळ्यात मजा म्हणजे त्याला तो कधी जगाचं ओझं खांद्यावर असल्यासारखा वागला नाही. सो इट वॉज व्हेरी इझी टू वर्क विथ हिम, कारण कधीही टेन्शन यायचं नाही. काहीतरी आपण करायचं, हे करूया ते करूया, हे ट्राय करू ते ट्राय करू, पण असे भीती नाही वाटायची कधी की होईल का नाही, होईल का नाही. होईल, करूया, करून तर बघूया काय होतं. सुरुवात केली कामं करायला. सगळ्यात 2-3 गोष्टी आमच्या झाल्या नाही. एक PTTF पुणे ट्रॅफिक ट्रान्सपोर्टेशन फोरम आम्ही हे ट्रॅफिकच्या सगळ्या प्रॉब्लेम्सला कंटाळून चालू केला, आणि त्याच्यामध्ये बऱ्याच लोकांनी भाग घेतला. 2-3 वर्कशॉप्स मी केली होती टू सेन्सिटाईज पीपल. त्याला सिटिझन एम्पॉवरमेंट वर्कशॉप. सुजितनी कायम मला म्हणायचं, कर पाहिजे आपण लोकांना हे सांगायला, बघूया करूया. मग PTTF थोडे वर्ष चाललं आहेत, मला दिसत आहेत PTTFचे बरेच जुने लोक इथे. मग ते बंद झालं, आणि खरं आम्ही खूप महत्त्वाचं काम केलं एकत्र, ते पुण्याच्या टेकड्या वाचवण्यासाठी. त्याच्यात मला वाटतं इथे असलेले सगळे लोक सहभागी होते कुठल्या ना कुठल्या प्रकाराने. इथे आरती आणि अतुल दिसत आहेत मला. इतकं व्यवस्थित ते काम झालं, की वी वर एबल टू प्रेशराइज द गव्हर्मेंट टू ॲक्सेप्ट दॅट देर शुड बी नो कन्स्ट्रक्शन ऑन द हिल्स. पण इट वॉज डन मोस्ट रिलक्टंटली, बट वी सक्सीडेड. आय थिंक दॅट्स द वन टाईम वी रिअली सक्सीडेड. आता काय होईल माहिती नाही त्या टेकड्यांचं, पण ॲट दॅट टाईम ॲटलीस्ट वी सक्सीडेड. नंतर आम्ही बरीच कामं एकत्र केली. मी आणि सुजित सह्याद्री शाळा जी आहे कृष्णमूर्ती फाउंडेशनची, त्याच्या एक्झिक्युटिव्हवरती आम्ही दोघंही आहोत. आणि आमच्याबरोबर आदिती पंत आणि बीजी देशमुख आमच्याबरोबर, ते यूज टू चेअर द मीटिंग्स. तर आम्ही पुण्याहून त्या मीटिंग्ससाठी याला जायचो. म्हणजे भीमेवरचं जे धरण आहे तिवई, म्हणजे राजगुरुनगरच्या पुढे तिथे ती शाळा आहे. आणि जाताना अव्याहत माझं सुजितचं काहीतरी बोलणं चाललेलं असायचं. तर बीजी देशमुखांनी एकदा मागे वळून पाहिलं, ते म्हणाले, तुम्ही फार दिवसांनी भेटताय का एकमेकांना? आम्हाला दोघांना, आम्ही एकमेकांकडे पाहिलं, म्हटलं नाही, कालच भेटलो होतो, कालच. तर गप्पा कधी संपायच्याच नाहीत. म्हणजे विद्या आणि सुजित त्यांना मी जेवायला बोललेलं की विद्या म्हणायची, तुम्ही दोघं जण इफ यू आर गोइंग टू टॉक शॉप आय एम नॉट कमिंग. आणि आम्ही म्हणायचो नाही आम्ही वी विल नॉट टॉक शॉप, असं दोघंही तिला कबूल करायचो, पण कधी त्याच्यात घसरायचो कळायचं नाही. आता असं झालं आहे की आता ते नवीन टेकडीवर रस्ता करणार, हे करणार, ते करणार. दरवेळेला पेपरमध्ये वाचलं की असं वाटतं की अरे सुजितला फोन केला पाहिजे आता आणि ठरवलं पाहिजे काय करायचं पुढची ॲक्शन. आता मला वाटतं आपल्यावरती मोठी जबाबदारी येऊन पडलेली आहे, दोज ऑफ अस हू आर स्टील हिअर, की वी नीड टू वर्क विथ द सेम एनर्जी आणि डिलिव्हर, का न घाबरता काम करून वी नीड टू डिलिव्हर. आय थिंक ही विल बी विथ अस इन स्पिरिट ऑल द टाईम, बिकॉज वी ऑल बिलीव्ड इन द सेम थिंग. पण एका वाक्यात जर सुजितबद्दल काही बोलायचं झालं तर मी म्हणेन अत्यंत निर्मळ मनाचा माणूस होता. आणि आय थिंक दॅट इज द बेस्ट वे आय कॅन डिस्क्राईब हिम.
And you're right, I still hear his voice even now at a meeting. The other day at the NMT committee meeting, I could imagine him there saying things. It was just so surreal. I think as long as that voice remains in our ears and our head, I think we are good. I'm going to ask next Prasanna Desai to come up and talk. Prasanna is an architect and urban designer who has helped to transform the streets of Pune. You might have seen some changes, but Prasanna has on many occasions embarrassingly acknowledged and emphasized that his transformation is purely because of Sujit. That is where that transformation happened. So we'll hear more about that from Prasanna.
It's very difficult to speak, so I have written down something. Bhishma Pitama of sustainable transport is no more. With the passing away of Sujit Patwardhan, an era in sustainable urban transport has come to an end. He was known for his activism, but behind this activism was pure passion, commitment, concern for the quality of life in the cities. I remember meeting Sujit Patwardhan in a conference organized by him in FC College, which Anita mentioned just now, way back in 2003. I shifted from Delhi in 1999-2000. Way back in 2003, where Mr. Kishan Mehta from Mumbai was the chief guest, and this was followed by formation of PTTF, Pune Traffic and Transportation Forum. And this was the beginning of 3 decades long association with him. His understanding, research, analysis was far ahead of time. In an environment where environment and sustainable transport was not a priority, he was never tired of explaining the concerns and concept to authorities every hour, every day, week after week, month after month, year after year, repeating the same stotra like Shubham Karoti. For the last 3 decades that I have known him, Sujit was a reservoir of knowledge which he shared with humility and simplicity, thus inspiring and encouraging young and old alike. If you ever sat with him in a meeting or conference, you would see a notepad which had a cover of a pastel color cover, tinted paper, with a bold number on it which said 67 or 89. So that were his books, in which he tried to take notes. He would also take down notes along with, and he would talk during the discussion when he used to get bored. Ye kya ho raha hai bhai? And draw some wonderful sketches which we saw. Today, we see a lot of concern as well as reasonable amount of implementation of sustainable city environment policies, particularly in urban transportation, walkability, and cycling, etc. The entire credit for this undoubtedly goes to Sujit Patwardhan, not only at Pune but at the national level. This is my absolutely firm belief. This was initiated by him almost 3 decades or 4 decades ago, and now we see things happening. One considers oneself very lucky that I had the opportunity to spend hours and hours together with him and learn from him all the nitty-gritties and values of urban mobility and sustainability. He used to call me at times, and we used to always converse in Hindi or English, never in Marathi. His beginning sentence used to be, "Kidhar ho bhai, bahut busy ho lagta hai." For me, Sujit was a mentor, guide, motivator, and above all a friend. Whenever, literally, whatever he was executing today in the public realm, whatever we are executed in the public realm today, the entire credit goes to Sujit Patwardhan. I saw some photographs of Dr. Geetam Tiwari and Dr. Dinesh Mohan. These 3 are the gurus for shaping my thoughts, but the lion's share is with Sujit Patwardhan. Sujit sir, we will miss you a lot in every meeting, every discourse, but your teachings will stand by us throughout our career. We assure you that we will uphold all the values that you have inculcated in us with respect to sustainable transport and public realm and take the mission ahead. I always have very openly said that looking at the contribution in this field by Sujit, with his knowledge, passion, perseverance, he deserved an honorary doctorate, and I hope sometime some university will still honor him with this. That was his commitment. Yesterday I was in Aurangabad giving a talk, and this whole talk started and ended with looking at the face of Sujit all the time, because that is what I have really inculcated. When I came from Delhi, I was always in wilderness. I was teaching in the School of Architecture, doing some little architecture, but architects are never part of the urban public realm, apart from few of us who are here. And that is what Sujit always said, keep doing. And today I only hope that the national level movement, which Samnet has really initiated, will happen and his dreams will come through in terms of making our lives better. May his soul rest in peace, and God give strength to Vidyatai and all the family members to bear this irreparable loss. Sujit, you are with us and always be with us. Thank you.
Thank you, Prasanna. And really, when I see Prasanna talking to his students, I think this upma that you gave of Bhishma Pitama is so true, because it's now a 2nd or 3rd generation of young people who are influenced by those ideas. Thank you. I'm now going to invite Sanskriti Menon, Director of Center for Environment Education, and really she and Parisar are just working together on so many things. So I'm sure she will have a lot to share. Sanskriti?
I met Sujit in the early 90s, Sujit and Vidya, when I was planning my move from Ahmedabad to Pune. And my colleague Vivek Khatpekar, Anita, and Doc, you know him well, that was the first name, Sujit and Vidya, you have to meet. And Sujit, basically Nirmala and Vivek Khatpekar, they have a very fond association with Sujit and Vidya because they met there in the early years, I think in the 80s, perhaps 70s and 80s. And of course they got married, and so that's a very dear memory, and Nirmala of course conveys her remembrance to you. And So when I moved to Pune, it was really that the CE office started at Bharati Vidyapeeth with Doc Bharucha. And with Doc, I was learning about biodiversity. And with Vijay and with Sujit, it was urban environment and development issues. And through the early 90s and mid 90s, it was really the education of learning that, there is the 82 to 87 master plan that you must actually, it's our role as civil society organizations, as citizens to intervene, to give our suggestions, and we must. And so learning about how you actually work as an NGO and how you work and give your suggestions. And then in the mid-90s, it was, I think, perhaps one of the early agitations on, or shall I say protests at least, about Ferguson College Road. The trees were to be cut, and we had these meetings at Ferguson College, and Sujit, he was talking about even at that point in the mid-90s when traffic and transportation was not an issue people were speaking about, at least in Pune in India, that much. And he actually brought in, that counterintuitive notions that if you're going to increase the road width, you are attracting more vehicles. So it was very strange for many of us, but he brought in that idea, and I think that has very much taken root. And I remember it, I think maybe it was in 97 or so, that we walked down Ferguson College Road. We, of course, had placards, etc., but then with the commissioner at that time, I think it was Mr. Ramanacha, we were walking and speaking about why this, this should not happen. But of course, the Ferguson College Road was widened, but then it was an introduction to me about the life of the city, the role of citizens, and the fact that you must continue to have this dialogue amongst all of us, as well as with the municipal corporation. And we used to bring out a newsletter, Newsy, we used to call it. My colleague Savita is here. Later it became Education for Change. So Sujit was, of course, not only in these environment and development issues, but as others have also spoken, he was so generous of his time to help me also understand that, how do you do layout and what is a good publication? And go to Mudra, you would see all the books on design and layout, and he would share that, what is good design. And he was always very amused because I had a small Mac PC, which I would carry on my kinetic Honda to go to Paika type near Jahangir Dock and take those printouts and then come to Mudra to say, okay, now you have to print. But he also showed me how printing works, because he showed me the Mudra presses, spoke about the building itself. And, in all of those conversations, you always get a little more insight into what is happening in life and the city and issues, etc. About jazz, a very personal sort of memory, that of course we came to Sujit and Vidya's place, and Ravi, my daughter Anusha, and I often listened to jazz together at the Pune Jazz Club. But at one point, my daughter, she was 11, 12, 13, beginning her interest in music. And of course, like children always like animation and cartoons. But he heard what she had to say about the use of jazz in a cartoon that she liked. And he encouraged her to, in fact, have a presentation at the Pune Jazz Club, all of 13 years old, on jazz and animation. And I think that was, in a sense, we have so many formative influences ourselves, also in my own career, but I could see that also that, in my daughter's work and interest in music and animation, which I hold really dear. Speaking about Education for Change, which is the newsletter that Savita and I used to bring out together, we have an interview with Sujit in about 2010, where he's speaking about his own influences in traffic and transportation. He's speaking about this film called Contested Streets, about the BBC U-turn, one U-turn, right? And then also, of course, Jane Jacobs' writings. And I think introducing, he was obviously, as others have also said, so generous with sharing his knowledge, his contacts, his And as his own conviction of the centrality of mobility in the how a city becomes, how livable a city is, as that grows stronger, and as with PTTF, and which also then somehow morphed into something we call the Development Plan Coalition, I think, also with Janvani and others. And many of the logos that you see here, we, with PTTF and becoming the Development Plan Forum, there was also this conversation with many other organizations and movements in the city, with Lakshmi and KKP Swatch, and of course with the Greens, it was always there, but also about habitation, slum habitation, livelihood, economy, etc. And we were able to then learn from each other in this, both these forums. And I think that helped also then maybe start to influence again the next development plan. I don't know where that is going, but anyway, those were times that we were able to actually broaden the base and the understanding of traffic and transportation with having these linkages. But this interview that I'm speaking about would be really nice if we can maybe somehow reprint it, and maybe we have a look at it again and maybe republish and recontextualize it. Another memory that I have is, Sujit and I attended a photography workshop with Piyush Seksaria, who's also from Pune, Pimpri Chinchwad, and he's an architect, and he and a person called Stefan Kopelkamp from Germany, they organized a photography workshop, and there were 7-8 of us, or maybe 10 of us, including Rainer Horik, the German journalist, radio journalist. He used to live here in Pune, he's shifted to Germany now. And all of us, the title of the exhibition that we then put together was Living in a Changing Environment. And I think that is again a very powerful set of photographs that we should locate maybe through Piyush or something and look at a way of republishing those. The photography exhibition encouraged us to actually look at the city, and of course the title, Living in a Changing Environment. And so each of us had these different stories, but we then went for a walk in the core city along with Sujit. And his own photographs were, a locksmith, a keymaker, a flower vendor, and small businesses in the core city. The change of a new building, an old building becoming a new building, a temple which is subsumed within a new building. And all of these spoke about what changes the city is going through. And I think it will be very valuable to bring these out again, because I think they continue to, we continue to look at the city again through Sujit's eyes and lens and the broad thinking that he had. That's what I thought. It was, it's really nice to have these different facets of Sujit being shared today. And yesterday we had a meeting of the Car-Free Cities Alliance. And there it was really that Sujit is present among us, and people remembered him. And I think there were guests from Kathmandu, Cape Town, and other parts of the world. And they look at Pune as a leader in sustainable mobility. And the generations that Raviji was speaking about, Rajendra Ravi, who spoke first, present here as well. So the change that we see in Pune today, the beginnings of new street design, the change, the fact that there is a non-motorized transport committee, the change that we see when a municipal official speaks about sustainable mobility in a way that you feel, wow, this is pretty good. Despite the many wrongs that are going on, you see these signs of hope. And I think, as Prasanna just said, that if other cities are looking to Pune for inspiration, it is really that it is because of Sujit that we see these beginnings of change physically happening as well. There's a long way to go, of course, but as many have said, it's that positivism and the will to carry on that we hold dearest in our heart with Sujit. Thanks.
The next person, I'm just going to read out a short message. It's the person that Prasanna also mentioned. We also saw photographs of Sujit with Professor Geetam Tiwari. She's a professor at IIT Delhi and a big proponent of sustainable mobility, along with Professor Dinesh Mohan, who we also saw in the photograph. Unfortunately, Dinesh Mohan also passed away recently. So in a sense, we've lost sort of two big stalwarts of this whole movement across India. And Sujit was sort of almost single-handedly responsible for getting Geetam and Dinesh to come to Pune. They were talking about this new crazy idea called bus rapid transit, which meant dedicating one lane of a motor vehicle, one motor vehicle lane for a bus, a radical idea. And sometimes things just click. And there was the seminar that Anita spoke about at CDSA called One Right Turn, and Dr. Karir, who was then the commissioner, was there. He was influenced, and JNNURM came. They were asking for proposals, and boom, we got the first bus rapid transit project in Pune. I know there's a long story with bus rapid transit. All of us have been hearing about it, but that was sort of the beginning of that idea. And Geetam just sent this message, a very short message. Sujit always reminded me that he had a type A personality, little impatient and excitable. However, I always considered him to be passionate about whatever he did, most of all about sustainability and, of course, sustainable mobility. His positive energy and passion inspired me, and I looked forward to having long phone chats with him. He leaves behind a rich legacy of honest, passionate sustainability enthusiasts. I will always remember his infectious laughter and passionate words as we continue to work in this area. Now I will ask Ashish Kothari to come up. He's the founder member of Kalpavriksha, and just like with so many other speakers before, I think their association goes back a long way. It's mentioned here that Sujit wrote a chapter on transportation in Ashish's recent book, Alternative Futures, India Unshackled. Ashish.
Zindabad, friends. I think very few people know, probably even Sujit did not know that one of the main reasons I shifted from Delhi to Pune, I and my ex-partner Sunita in 1997, was actually Sujit. Not that he asked us to shift, and not that we ever told him, but we wanted to shift out of Delhi for reasons that anybody who's lived in Delhi will understand, and into a small town. And Pune was our first choice because we said if people like Sujit and Vijay Paranjpe and Eraj Barucha and all can be here, it must be an exciting and fun city. So that was really one of the thoughts behind why we shifted here. This is 25 years back. In these last 25 to 30 years since I've known him, I think I would think of him as being one of the most persistent and perseverant environmentalists ever in India. Many of you have mentioned this quality, and I think the consistency of the message that he was constantly giving us, it wasn't a static message, but it was a consistent message that you have to transform mobility and urban design and transportation in fundamental ways. That is the kind of message in a non-compromising way. Again, if you look at it, a lot of us have gone quiet because we fear the government or some action that will take place, and we don't want to criticize policies, but Sujit was not like that. He was non-compromising. He would always say what he felt was the truth. And I think personally, apart from all that he taught us on transportation and mobility and all of that, I think it's this quality of persistence, honesty, and non-fearing public messaging that I learned from him. He was also non-compromising in some other ways. He and I, when we first came here, Mudra was recommended to us as a printing press, and he and I and my other colleagues in Kalpavriksha would have these long, sometimes tense discussions about design, because he had his own ideas, we had our ideas. Ours were very amateur, his were professional, but nevertheless, so there were these clashes. But at the end of all of this, and given his very gentle, persistent nature, I think the designs ended up being fantastic, more because of him than us. And it's that sort of non-compromising quality, whether it was in the public messaging or in design and what he he did for so many groups through Mudra and of course through Parisar and elsewhere that we would all remember. So, I mean, there's lots more to say. I think many others have shared. I don't want to go on and on. 3 or 4 months back, we actually had a meeting in which he came to Aund. I was actually quite ashamed because I should have gone to his home given his state of health. But he came, he insisted, he said, no, I'm going to come to Aund and I want to meet you and discuss fundraising. And I was like, gosh, there's this much more senior person who wants my inputs on fundraising. I mean, how much more humble can you be? So in that sense, he would also teach us humility and never be afraid of asking somebody much younger for advice and suggestions and inputs. That's all of this and much more was Sujit. I hope wherever he is, he's found excellent cycling lanes to cycle around, and that as his wheels turn on those cycling lanes, he's listening to his favorite jazz. Thank you.
I would now like to ask Professor Shruti Tambe to come up. We've been having very interesting conversations with Shruti on sustainable mobility. We are often invited, Sujit and I, to be part of the conversations with the students. And so it's been a wonderful way, again, like Prasanna said, to again transfer this knowledge and that passion to a whole new generation. Yeah, Shruti.
अनेक माणसं अशी असतात की त्यांना त्यांच्याविषयी बोलताना वडिलांसारखा, अमक्यासारखा असं म्हणायची पद्धत असते, किंवा आपल्याकडे विशेषतः स्त्री पुरुष असतील तर मुलीसारखी आहे वगैरे वगैरे. सुजितच्या बाबतीत मला वाटतं सगळ्यांचं एकमत होईल की मित्रासारखा नाही, काकासारखा नाही, भाचीसारखा नाही, काहीच नाही, मित्रच. आणि ते जे मैत्र त्यांनी अनेक पिढ्यांबरोबर, अनेक क्षेत्रातल्या लोकांबरोबर अत्यंत सुंदर प्रकारे सांभाळलं. मला वाटतं आपल्या समाजामध्ये हे इतकं दुर्मिळ आहे की मैत्री नावाची गोष्ट इतकी सुंदर, खरी, समानतापूर्ण आणि जिवंत असते. हे सुजितकडनं अनेकदा अनुभवायला मिळालं आणि शिकायलाही मिळालं. तो कधी पहिल्यांदा भेटला वगैरे मला आठवत नाही, कारण तशी आमची जवळून ओळख नवी आहे. पण मला तुम्हाला गंमत सांगायला आवडेल की मी ह्या गावात शिकायला आले आणि त्याच्यानंतरच्या काळात जेव्हा फर्ग्युसन कॉलेजवरची झाडं तोडतायत अमुक तमुक, त्या काळात परिसरचं नाव बरंच जोरात होतं. आणि सुजित आम्ही जो ओळखत होतो ते आहेत ना, ते सुजित पटवर्धन हे हिरो म्हणून कुठेतरी टू बी एम्युलेटेड इन युअर ओन लाईफ. रिसर्च बेस्ड, स्ट्रॉंग आर्ग्युमेंट्स, फिअरलेस आर्ग्युमेंट्स ह्यासाठी, आणि त्याचबरोबर रस्त्यावरती मिसळून घोषणा देत सगळ्यांबरोबर जाणं, सरकारी अधिकाऱ्यांपर्यंत पोचणं, ते झोपडपट्टीमध्ये फिरणं, या सगळ्या थरांमध्ये ज्या पद्धतीने सुजित मिसळत असे, तेव्हा ते आमचे हिरो ते बघा सुजित पटवर्धन होते. आणि तिथंपासून नंतर वेगवेगळ्या मंचांवरती बरोबर सहकारी म्हणून पण वावरण्याची संधी मिळाली. परिसरनी कधीकधी बोलावून घेतलं हक्कानी आणि सर्व्हे करायचा आहे, जरा फॉर्म्स बघून दे आणि सूचना सांगही म्हटलं, तेव्हा खरं तर संकोचच वाटला. परंतु सुजितला आपल्या कामाची मदत होऊ शकते असं वाटतंय तर काहीतरी बरं असेल असंही तेव्हा वाटलं. पण परत सुजितच्या वागण्यामध्ये त्या प्रकारचा एक बेनोव्होलंट कुठला तरी असा पेट्रियार्कीचा भाग किंवा असं काही म्हणजे पेट्रनाईज करणं कधीच नव्हतं. तर तो तितक्याच थंडपणाने हे काही बरोबर नाही वाटत आहे, ते तुमचं सोशॉलॉजी जरा वेगळं चाललं आहे, हेही तितक्याच सहजपणे म्हणून टाकायचा. आणि म्हणून मी परत म्हणेन की सगळ्यात महत्त्वाचं सुजितविषयी जर मला कोणी विचारलं तर खरा माणूस आणि खरा मित्र कसा असावा याचा जर मला कोणी पडताळा कसा घ्यावा म्हटलं तर मी सुजितविषयीच्या अनेक आठवणी सांगू शकेन. दुसरीकडे आत्ता जे आपण खूप जणांच्या तोंडनं ऐकतो आहे त्याचं कलासक्त, सौंदर्यासक्त, आतून बाहेरून असणं आणि जगणं. मग त्याच्यामध्ये जॅझचा उल्लेख अनेक जणांनी केला आहे. पण आपल्याला माहिती आहे की वेगवेगळ्या भाषांमधलं काव्य, आत्मचरित्र, इथंपासनं ते कादंबऱ्या, फिल्म्स, या सगळ्याच प्रकारचा संचार त्याचा होता. आणि त्याच्यावरचं त्याची अधिकारवाणी असली तरी तोच अधिकारी आहे असा त्याचा दावाही कधी नव्हता. अर्थात कडकडून भांडायला सुजितसारखा मित्र हवा असंही अनेकदा आपल्याला वाटतं. आणि कोणीतरी रुसण्याचा उल्लेख केला, तो मात्र माझ्या वाट्याला आला नाही. परंतु अत्यंत चिडून फोन मात्र यायचे. किंवा कधीतरी आपण एखाद्या कामाने ठरवलेल्या वेळी फोन केला तर मुद्रामध्ये कुठला तरी भयंकर आणीबाणीचा प्रसंग आला आहे असं काहीतरी बोलणं ऐकू यायचं. आणि मग नंतर तो शांत झाल्यानंतर खूपच साध्या आवाजात सांगायचा, नाही ते आज अशी डेडलाईन आहे त्यावरनं जरा चाललं आहे, ते जाऊ दे, काय होतं तुमचं. अलीकडच्या काळामधली आपल्या भारतातल्या लोकशाहीची जी काय परिस्थिती आहे त्यात 4 वर्षापासून सुजितला पोलीस संरक्षण होतं. आणि मी हे आवर्जून सांगेन, कारण सुजितचा तो स्वभाव नाही की तो हे बोलेल, विद्याताईंचाही नाही. पण आत्ताच्या वातावरणामध्ये सुजित हा थ्रेट वाटतो आत्ताच्या राज्यव्यवस्थेला आणि आत्ताच्या समाजव्यवस्थेला पण. ह्याची शरम मला वाटते. सुजितला पोलीस प्रोटेक्शन होतं, 24 तास होतं. आणि सुजित ते गमतीत घेत होता. अनेकदा म्हणत होता, पळवून लावलं, मी सांगतच नाही त्याला मी कुठे आहे, मी जातो स्कूटरवरती, असे सगळे प्रकार त्याच्या बोलण्यात असले तरी या सगळ्याचा एक खोल चरा निश्चितपणे सुजितच्या असण्यावर आणि मनावरती पूर्णपणे उमटला होता. दक्षिणायनचं इथे पेन इंटरनॅशनलबरोबर मोठं एक फेस्टिवल होतं पेन इंटरनॅशनलचं. आणि मला आठवतं बालगंधर्वमध्ये स्टेजवर सुजित आणि इतर तिघांना बसवून जेव्हा सांगितलं गेलं, हे बघा हे आणि यांना पोलीस संरक्षण आहे, त्यानंतर पण जेव्हा भेटलो तेव्हाही सुजितच्या बोलण्यात तो विषाद होता की आम्ही पुढे निघालो आणि जे करतोय ते करत राहू, पण मागे पाहिलं तर गर्दीच नाही आहे. आणि आता हे उघडपणे बोलणारे लोकही नाही आहेत की आम्ही तुमच्यासोबत आहोत. आणि याची खंत मात्र तो कधीही कंठाळी पद्धतीने बोलणारा नव्हता आणि उरबडव्या तर अजिबातच नव्हता. त्यामुळे दे वॉज नो मेलोड्रॅमॅटिक व्हेंटिंग अबाउट इट ॲट ऑल. पण सर्टनली ती एक विषादाची झाक नक्की गेल्या 3-4 वर्षामध्ये त्याच्या बोलण्यात होती. मी शेवटी इतकंच म्हणेन की चळवळीतले लोकसुद्धा अनेकदा कुठेतरी एकसुरी होतात. सुजितच्या बाबतीत त्याचं साहित्यावरचं, कलांवरचं प्रेम, त्याची चित्रकला, त्याची फोटोग्राफी आणि सुबक सगळंच आयुष्य असावं आणि त्याला अर्थ जे कृष्णमूर्तींच्या फिलॉसॉफीतनं जो त्याला गवसला होता तो असावा, अशी इतकी व्यापक चौकट त्याच्या मनात होती की सुजितचा ॲक्टिव्हिजम कंठाळीही कधी झाला नाही आणि एकसुरीही कधी झाला नाही. आणि म्हणूनच बोलता बोलता कोणी अगदीच विरोधी मत मांडलं तरी टपली मारल्यासारखं काहीतरी बोलून तो पुढेही जाऊ शकायचा आणि पुन्हा येऊन हाताला धरून कॉफी प्यायला कॉफी ब्रेकमध्ये घेऊनही जाऊ शकायचा. वाचन अफाट होतं, स्मरणशक्ती चांगली होती. आपण सगळे जाणतो की लिखाणही चांगलं होतं. पण ह्या सगळ्याचा परिपाक म्हणून भारतातल्या लोकशाहीमध्ये जी एक अभावाने दिसणारी गोष्ट आहे आणि जी कमी मंडळी आहेत त्यातली निम्मी मला वाटतं आज इथे आहेत जवळजवळ, आणि जी प्रत्यक्ष नाही आहेत ती आज मनानी त्यांच्या मेसेजेसमधनंही आपल्याबरोबर आहेत. पण इन्स्टिट्यूशन बिल्डिंग आणि पॉलिसी मेकिंगसाठी सातत्याने एक भर घालणं, याचा एक सातत्यपूर्ण प्रयत्न सुजितनी केला. मग ते कोर्ट केसेसमधला सहभाग असेल, पॉलिसी डॉक्युमेंट्स लिहिणं असेल, परिसरच्या वार्तापत्रातनं नियमितपणे काही विषय लावून धरणं असेल किंवा इतर अनेक मंचांवरनं भागीदारी करणं असेल. आणि मला वाटतं आपल्या समाजातली लोकशाही टिकायची असेल तर सुजितसारखी सुंदर पर्सनल आयुष्य, ते समाज आपला चांगला राहावा, आरोग्यपूर्ण राहावा आणि सुंदरही असावा म्हणून आग्रह धरणारी माणसं आपल्यात वाढायला हवीत. आणि हेच आपल्याला सुजित सांगतो. खूप मागची एक छोटी आठवण सांगते आणि थांबते. आमच्या विद्यार्थ्यांसाठी मला असं वाटायला लागलं विद्यापीठातल्या की फार एकसुरी आणि चौकटीतलं शिक्षण होतं आहे, खेड्यातली मुलं येत आहेत, त्यांना हे काही जमतही नाही आहे आणि सूर जुळत नाही आहेत. म्हणून सुजितला म्हटलं काय करता येईल, परिसरबरोबर काही करता येईल का. तो म्हणाला चालेल की इंटर्नशिप करूया. काय करूया, कुठली आहेत मुलं, मग नावं सांगितली, खेडी सांगितली. आपण त्यांना सायकलची दुकानं जी पुण्यातली असायची त्यांचा सर्व्हे करायला लावूया. मग ते सगळं काम मुलांनी त्यांच्या कुवतीप्रमाणे आणि कमी अधिक रस असं केलं. आणि मग मी म्हटलं आपण एक शेवटचा कार्यक्रम करूया का, तुम्ही याल का विद्यापीठातमध्ये, आपण वर्गखोलीतच कार्यक्रम करूया. आणि मी आपलं इतकं सहज ते म्हणाले होते. आणि यशदातलं कोणी होतं आणि सुजित होता आणि अर्थात CE हक्काचे जे आमचे नेहमीचे लोक आहेत ते होते. परंतु शेवटच्या दिवशी जेव्हा कार्यक्रमाला सुजित आला, अर्थातच मला धक्का बसला. आदल्या दिवशी त्यांनी फक्त मला म्हटलं होतं सेंड मी द नेम्स ऑफ ऑल द व्हॉलंटियर्स हू हॅड पार्टिसिपेटेड. मी ती पाठवून दिली होती. एक इतकं देखणं आणि अर्थातच रिसायकल्ड पेपरवरचं असं परिसरचा लोगो असलेलं आणि त्या इंटर्नशिपला एक नाव देऊन बनवलेलं सर्टिफिकेट अत्यंत सुंदर असं घेऊन तो गठ्ठा स्वतः एक 2-3 दिवसात बनवून घेऊन सुजित तिथे आला होता. आणि आमच्या म्हणजे विद्यापीठाच्या मला वाटते इंटर्नशिप सोशॉलॉजीमधली अशा प्रकारची पहिली होती. पण ज्या सन्मानाने त्यांनी त्या मुलांसाठी ते केलं, मला वाटते ते आपल्याला खूप हवं आहे. आणि म्हणून सुजित हा विसरणं त्याला तर शक्यच नाही, पण तो आपल्या कृतींमधनं बिया पेरत गेलेला सुजित हा उगवत फुलत राहील ही मला खात्री आहे. धन्यवाद.
I'm now going to ask or invite Justice Hemant Gokhale to come up.
1965 ते 69-70 या काळामध्ये मी मुंबई युवक क्रांती दलाशी संबंधित होतो आणि माझा मित्र विवेक पुरंदरे युक्रांमध्ये होता, तोही आज इथे हजर आहे. तो सांगतो की त्यावेळेला विद्या नारळकर याही युक्रांमध्ये ॲक्टिव्ह होत्या, पण माझी समोर त्यांची त्यावेळेला काही ओळख नव्हती. आणि नंतर मी वकील झालो, प्रॅक्टिस करायला लागलो. एक 7-8 वर्षाची माझी प्रॅक्टिस झाली असेल त्यावेळेला सुजित पटवर्धनची माझी अधिक ओळख झाली. सुजित, रवी भागवत, नेत्रप्रकाश भोग आणि एक शहा हे 4 जण मिळून त्यांनी परिसर ही संस्था स्थापन केलेली होती. आणि निरनिराळे प्रश्न, काही बाबतीत कन्सल्टेशन असायचं, काही बाबतीत कोर्टात जावं लागायचं. तर अशा प्रकरणामध्ये आम्ही भेटत गेलो आणि आमची मैत्री वाढत गेली. कधी सुजितच्या घरी जायचं, कधी सुजित मुंबईला माझ्या घरी यायचा. आणि ह्या चौघांमध्ये जे शहा होते ते नियम, बायलॉज आणि ह्याच्यामध्ये अगदी किडा होते. आणि सुजितचं नेतृत्व आणि शहांचा सपोर्ट आणि ही 2 मंडळी त्यांच्याबरोबर रवी भागवत आणि नेत्रप्रकाश भोग अशी ती सगळी टीम असायची. मला त्यावेळेला मुंबई हायकोर्टात आम्ही एक केलेली केस आठवते. मी त्यातले जास्त पर्टिक्युलर्स देणार नाहीत, कारण काही व्यक्ती आज हयात नाहीत, काही आहेत सुद्धा. पुण्यातल्या एका गजबजलेल्या भागामध्ये एका महत्त्वाच्या रोडच्या बाजूला, रस्त्याच्या बाजूला एक पार्किंग प्लॉट रिझर्व केलेला होता. आणि MRTP ॲक्टप्रमाणे अमुक एक काळामध्ये जर रिझर्वेशन असेल तर ते त्याप्रमाणे महापालिकेने कारवाई करणं आवश्यक असतं. आणि इफ यू डोंट ॲक्ट विदिन दॅट पिरियड द रिझर्वेशन लॅप्सेस. Almost it was a situation like that. And well, on behalf of Parisar, I had filed a petition in the High Court. And it came before a bench. The judge was a very strong judge. The same day I had another case. That was of a student who had been admitted to Indira Gandhi Institute of Research and research. And for half a mark, her admission was likely to be cancelled. त्या दोन्ही केसेस माझ्या पाठोपाठ होत्या. आधी सुजितची केस होती आणि नंतर त्या मुलीची केस होती. आणि मी सुजितला म्हटलं की आवर केस इज अ स्ट्रॉंगर केस, इट्स अ पब्लिक इंटरेस्ट मॅटर अँड आय एम शुअर द जज विल टेक इंटरेस्ट इन टू दॅट. बट ॲज फार एज द अदर केस इज कन्सर्न, आय वॉज नॉट होपफुल बिकॉज वेल द इन्स्टिट्यूट वॉज व्हेरी स्ट्रिक्ट अँड मोस्ट प्रॉबेबली द गर्ल वुड हॅव लॉस्ट हर ॲडमिशन. Now, when the matter came up, I tried to persuade the judge. First, of course, Sujit's case came. I tried to persuade. I pointed out various aspects in the interest of public and variety of things. Somehow the judge could not be persuaded. And then he said, well, you think that whatever Mr. Patwardhan says is the only correct thing. And then he rejected the petition. Sujit was standing behind and he was about to laugh. But then he left it at that. Those of you who know him well, who knew him well, he used to laugh merrily. You know, that was a part of his personality. And then, as luck would have it, the second matter was admitted and I got the relief for that girl. Well, this relationship, this friendship continued for quite some time. In 1994, I became a judge. Well, later on went to the Supreme Court, retired in 2014. During this period, well, we used to occasionally meet and contact, but obviously, Sujit जास्त नर्मदा बचाव आंदोलन आणि अशा प्रकारच्या ॲक्टिव्हिटीजमध्ये होता. वेल आम्ही संबंध ठेवून होतो, पण जास्त भेटणं होत नव्हतं. पण रिटायर झाल्यानंतर मग मात्र आमची भेट व्हायला लागली. तो थोडाफार आम आदमी पार्टीशी थोडा संबंधित झाला होता. त्यावेळेला आम्ही क्वचित भेटलेलो होतो. आणि 2 वर्षापूर्वी मला बांगलादेशला जाण्याचा प्रसंग आला. आणि व्हॉट एव्हर आय हॅव सीन इन बांगलादेश, आय रोट अ बुक initially in Marathi and later on it was translated into English. And the Marathi book was published on 1st October 2021. And Vidya and Sujit very much attended the function. Well, I was very happy to meet them. I wanted them to come and they did come. त्याच्यानंतर एक गांधीजींवरची 3 पुस्तकं प्रकाशित झाली. त्यावेळेला आम्ही भेटलो. पण समोर नंतर अधिक भेटी होऊ शकल्या नाहीत. 40 वर्षाहून अधिक सुजित आणि आम्ही एकमेकांना ओळखत होतो. आणि तुम्ही सगळे सुजितला ओळखणारे निरनिळ्या एव्हरीबडी हॅज अ डिफरंट फॅसेट अँड फ्रॉम दॅट ही नोज सुजित और न्यू सुजित अँड आय न्यू सुजित फ्रॉम अ डिफरंट फॅसेट. सो दिस इज हाऊ इट हॅपन्स. वी नो इच some persons from some facet, but we don't know the person in the entirety. Well, Sujit was a very good friend. Losing him suddenly was a big shock. I pay my tribute to him and I join in the condolence to Vidya, Amruta and Lara. Well, Sujit has left memories with number of us. आपल्या सगळ्यांना सुजितच्या आठवणी आहेत आणि those memories we are going to carry. Well, I see in many of these functions we see number of seniors. And of course, fortunately, there are some youngsters also. But the youngsters today, I hope they do something, but they are all, well, going for their own career. Now, a person like Sujit, son of an IAS officer, who went to the school founded by J. Krishnamurti, had a good education in Britain, had a good printing press to support him. Well, continuing that and later on living that. He went for public causes. Now, I was also there in the youth movement for 4 or 5 years, but later on went into my practice and then became a judge and went away from all these things. But as far as the youngsters are concerned today, well, they must think how a person like Sujit could do so many things, so many friends, so many activists were attracted to him. So they should take some inspiration from him. That is what I would say. Thank you.
I would like to invite Mr. Arvind Gupta also to come up.
I knew Sujit's younger brother, Chinu, and his wife, Jayu, in 1978. I was introduced to them by Dr. Anil Sadgopal. Sujit I met only in 1985, and not at a social gathering, but for business. I had spent 4 years with the trade union, with Shankar Guhan Yogi, and I'd come back to Pune. And I got a fellowship to write a book. And the fellowship was given by Professor Yashpal, who was the Secretary of the Department of Science and Technology. And I said we print 2,000 books. It was my first book. I was struggling. But Professor Yashpal was a PhD from the MIT, a physicist. And he said, no, nothing doing. This is great work. We're going to print 25,000 copies of that. So I kind of on my bicycle went to several good presses in Pune. One was the Kirloskar press, very well known. And I got quotations. People had psyched me. They said, look, this Mudra is an art press, right? And if you want to print a book on a newsprint, that's not the place to venture. But I mustered my courage because I thought 25,000 copies for a first book is a large print order. And so I bicycled down there and I met Sujit. First thing he said that, show me the manuscript. I've often seen him throw manuscript on people's faces because he would like to print what he wants to print. And he pored over it. There were lots of illustrations. It was in Hindi, Khel Khel Mein. And he only told me that I'd like to print it. What he quoted was, Mudra quoted at that time, was 2/3 of the lowest quotation I had got. And since then I stuck to him. That is 85. All my books, etc., etc. I think Sujit was so illustrious because of his illustrious background. You must not forget Achyutrao Patwardhan, his very, very eminent Rao Sahib Patwardhan. His father was an ICS. And the Patwardhan family per se have contributed so enormously to the cultural renaissance of Maharashtra. I don't think of any other family which has done so. You look at Anand Patwardhan, the greatest political filmmaker in our country, right? And so I think that is one reason. And I stuck to him with books, and he printed some of the greatest books on education. We printed Toto Chan. The world is divided into two camps, people who have read Toto Chan and not read Toto Chan. Today, Toto Chan, because Sujit printed it in Marathi, later on we gave it to the National Book Trust, is in the 28th edition in Marathi. And because Sujit printed this in the early 90s, today, in Bal Bharati textbook, there is a chapter on Toto Chan. Same with a book called His Teacher by Sylvia Ashton Warner. Summer Hill by A.S. Neal. How Children Fail, How Children Learn by John Holt. So some of the greatest books on education did not come from Bal Bharati or from the National Book Trust. But there were some very, very passionate people. I think I would always remember him smiling. And of course, he had a lot of passion. Long live my friend.
Thank you for that. The role that even your profession can play in percolating ideas and influencing society. I will now invite Ashok Datar, who has requested me. Ashok is also a member of our Sustainable Urban Mobility Network, Sumnet.
माझ्या लहानपणी किंवा कॉलेजच्या काळामध्ये I had a great contact with his famous uncles of Sujit's, that is Achyutrao Patwardhan and Rao Sahib Patwardhan. Along with, earlier also I worked with Jayaprakash also. So I had all this thing, in spite of all that, and I was a fairly bright student. But I really, after my college, I became part of the great capitalism in India. Completely forgot. And also forgot to name another big name was Vinoba Bhave. So with such a great company and guidance and inspiration in my childhood, I don't know how I swung to the ways of capitalism. Although I had always that some flame of activism was there, but it was much dormant. And I would like to give the credit of all this thing to wake up that spirit of all the persons, because I really came to Sujit first time as late as 20 years back. And that time my wife was a professor in Tata Institute, and she called him and me for talking on mobility. I had one or two specific ideas in regard to mobility, not a comprehensive knowledge. That was more due to business and mathematics. So I spoke in my piece with a lot of students clapped, and Sujit gave such a, I would say, heartfelt and genuine, and really it absolutely inspired me more than, I'm sure it must have inspired the student, but more than that, I was totally clean bold. I really just did not understand what is happening to me. Earlier, I had written a couple of articles in Times of India on parking. And I felt that that was a very important subject but completely ignored. And that was late 90s, not in the, well, I would say just immediately after Maruti had come up and creating the cult of the private motors, private cars. And then here is I suddenly hear Sujit and so many other aspects other than what I was only trying to focus on railways and parking and some narrow parts of this thing. And here is he just was swaying me completely. And my God, I realized that was one moment when I was because I was older, so I was given first chance, and then he spoke, but he spoke in such a passionately and such a, I don't know what kind of, that really left a great impact on me. With the help of my wife, I got contact of him, and then I found that I could not meet him frequently because I was in Mumbai and he was in Pune, and I felt that in Mumbai, the atmosphere in Pune was a more pro-environment, whereas in Mumbai was a kind of course, it will be unfair for me because Mumbai has a lot of good people also, but I felt that Mumbai was a very dry place and not really much enthusiasm, and here I became a newly proselytized convert on the environmental issues. And that was entirely due to him. And what could I tell him that I was really, could not be influenced by people like Jayaprakash, very close people to him, that is both of his uncles. And even then that was, of course, I had respect for them, no doubt about it. I would not, no way I would underestimate. But they could not somehow, or maybe I was in the wrong age or wrong school age and all that. And after my college, I went to America and I came back and I became a completely, in some funny way, and just part of my experience. I am not, again, not blaming them, but I worked of all the companies, one was Coca-Cola and other was Reliance. So it was a fabulous kind of my journey. And from that journey, I would say, if it all, somebody who pulled me back was Sujit. I mean, this is something very unique and particular. And he made my focus much broader. It was very narrow. I thought I had a good knowledge, but it was a very narrow focus. But he made it much broader. Then once I came to Pune was a very fabulous thing. I had a very inspiring meeting that was organized by which Parisar had invited Geetam Tiwari, and I heard her, and I was also completely spellbound about the bus priority, and I really became totally moved by these ideas, and one support who was not only ideologically correct and logical in thinking and persuasive, but also a very personal, dear friend. And as somebody earlier said very rightly, he was really Mitra. And it is really, Mitra is not one of the most difficult things, but he certainly was, and I'm sure he must have been Mitra of hundreds of people. And I enjoyed being that with him till the last day of his life. I think a couple of days, 2-3 days back earlier, I had some email exchange. He was extremely prompt and very, very to the point and always responsive. He never if you raise a certain issue, he would always respond in a very, in a true friend and guide and philosopher manner. And it was really absolutely a very touching moment. And whenever I really felt, what is this? I used to get a little disheartened because I used to get, maybe I was successful in business, but I was not successful in this career. And I really tried to bang my head hard on, I could not able to generate, I would say, as what you did successfully, and I could not manage to develop a group like yours in Mumbai, for example. Mumbai is also maybe its own problem, and maybe my problem also. I'm not excluding myself in that. But I could not really have much success. Although, interestingly enough, by accident, we got one project from MMRDA to build a bus lane, just because there was some traffic problem. And we we said, okay, let us do it in a very simple plain Jane bus lane, a simple curbside without any modern frills and all that. And we found, lo and behold, it was such a grandly successful. I was completely shocked. I was wondering whether am I dreaming or this is reality, you know? Because I was used to become so pessimistic, like I was like a soul-handedly trying for traffic parking problem. I really felt that why should we be so enamored and the motor car, and why should it be always be victim? And I was slowly seeing one by one roads were captured by the cars. That one after another roads almost rode down, and found out that they were more and more roads were becoming 24 hours free parking, no regulation. So as this category, as now more and more victims were falling, and I was really wondering how come nobody even remembers the word parking in municipality or MMRDA or state government. I thought this was a very obvious thing. We can raise a lot of money. I read somewhere that London raises $250 million, and court really pulled up. I said, what the hell you are doing? Are you just making money? I mean, maybe that's one extreme. But I felt why Mumbai that you can't park. And I really felt so bad. And in such moment when I used to tell this to Sujit, and he used to really give me a sense of comfort and encourage. I said, come on, this thing happened, and do it with people together and things like that and all. So it was really this part also, besides the my education and so many other, in Sumnet, of course, I used to always meet, but he was like a really very, I would say, now that I have heard the word friend, I would like to stick to that. He was not just like a brother, he was something wonderful friend, just not a friend. And I really felt that it was really tremendous to lose him. In fact, a month back, I think a month or two back, we had a long chat, 2 hours or 3 hours. I had come for some work in Pune, and I just rang him and he said, come. And I went to him, and then 2 hours we spent at his house and just shared so many things. He told me also what happened, what kind of problems he has also in Pune and all that. And it was really, I feel that he was really, I have not met him so many times. But whatever few times I have met over last 20 years, it was really a very, very cherished experience. So there is no question of that. There are many friends who have been meeting every day or every other day or every this thing. They are good people also, but Sujit was some kind of a very ideological mentor for me, and I really cherish that, and I really miss that. I would really like to convey all my best wishes to all his family and friends and all Punekar. Thank you. I am originally Punekar and unfortunately got sold to Mumbai.
So we've heard a lot about Parisar and its origins and its philosophy. I think we are going to have a small film where Sujit is talking about the beginnings of Parisar.
Parisar was started in 1980s. We started informally in 1981 and we formally registered it by 1987. And at that time, it's difficult to imagine, there was no television except some black and white, and there was no internet. The means of communication was public meetings, and Parisar used to have one public meeting perhaps every month where we would invite people to talk about the environment. It's basically an environment group. It is concerned with environmental awareness, environmental education, and environmental action. So this is what we have been doing. We did for almost 10 years. That we worked for understanding of the environment, including our own understanding, because none of us are experts in environment. We would get slides from World Wildlife Fund. We would get slides from people who are doing the planning of Mumbai city. We would invite the architects who had had meetings in different parts of Bombay to explain to the citizens what the development plan is about. And it is all about various aspects of the environment that Parisar was concerned. It is concerned about the energy and environment. It is concerned about jungle and wildlife and environment. It is concerned about city planning and environment. It is also concerned about traffic and environment. But slowly we began to see the bad impacts of wrong policies of traffic in the city. We saw that the old areas are being destroyed and concrete jungles are coming up. Where there were Puneri style Wada that was going and concrete jungles were coming. There were massive roads coming up where Pune at one time was a very comfortable Tumdar Shahar Manta Tase. It was a very pleasant place to live in with no traffic jams and no rush hour. It was pleasant to go out on anywhere. Kids would go on cycle to school. Today what's happened? We need buses to carry children. It is so much easier to make roads safer for cycling than to spend all this. You know, it's very difficult to convince policymakers, and that was the beginning of Parisar. Now it has gone more and more and more into transportation issues, and I think for last almost 25 years we have been working on transportation. We have been studying what other cities which have succeeded in improving transportation quality have done. We are trying to advocate that to the local authorities. Some of it is got accepted, some of it doesn't. So overall, it's a very slow process, but we know, we are prepared for it. Any change will take time. We can't just give up because people don't listen to us. Maybe the next commissioner will listen a little more. Maybe the next party which rules the city will show more sense. And so we are doing this. This is basically what Parisar does.
As you saw or heard right now, Parisar is at its heart an environmental organization. And those were our beginnings. You saw a lot of the examples of the Parisar Vartas, the lectures that Parisar had organized. But we also saw environment as something where we as a group had to work on policies, on legislation, on on finance, on issues of governance, because these are the things that shape the way in which we live our lives and the way that we can live our lives. So if we drive a lot today, it's because of how the city and the planning paradigm works, and therefore we often worked on that. And I think, this is not necessarily the crowd for me to say this in, because I think we understand this, but I think for a lot of people outside who see environment in its very narrowest sense, this was not something that could understand, and there would often be meetings and Sujit would get very agitated when somebody would say, "Tumhi झाडं किती लावलीत?" And Sujit was like, I don't think you understand anything about environment if that's the kind of question that you're asking. And this is something that I discovered when I first came to Pune and I was looking for a place to work, and there are so many wonderful organizations in Pune, as Ashish rightly pointed out, and I had my choice. I was spoiled for choices, and I did work with various organizations, but ultimately gravitated towards, as it turned out, not Parisar, but Pune Traffic and Transportation Forum, which was again a collaborative effort. And I think I keep emphasizing that one of the things that Ashok mentioned, and I often notice, is that many other cities, the NGOs aren't working together. Civil society isn't working together with academicians, with research, with institutions. And I think that's an amazing quality that we have today. And I must say that, as somebody said, Sujit has been the glue behind that and has set the example for us to follow. And Parisar at that time, as I discovered, was talking about organic farming and nuclear power and big dams, and those were probably fringe areas. Those were crazy ideas, and today we have seen that entire countries have revisited their nuclear policy. Big dams are being questioned even in the United States and other places. So these are ideas that eventually became mainstream. And in transportation, the conversations that began in the 80s, in 2005 the government came out with the National Urban Transport Policy, and in many ways now that policy is saying a lot of the things, it's echoing a lot of the things that Parisar was talking about almost 20 years before that. I also do want to point out that because of this nature of Sujit, it's gotten transmitted into us, and today Parisar believes in collaborations, believes in networks, and Sumnet has been mentioned by some people. We're also part of something called the Clean Air Collective, which is a national network of people working on air pollution issues. and Shweta and Sharmila from Parisar work on air pollution. We're also part of something called the Road Safety Network. Again, the idea is that one organization by itself will always fall short. We'll never have the strength, but there is strength in our collective action. And Sandeep has been working on with the Road Safety Network, pushing legislation, pushing policies, and so on and so forth. Similarly, at the local level, we've been working very closely with the organizations, and I mentioned Sanskriti, Harshad, Pranjali, all of these young people, and Sujit. One of the photos that we shared is really a dear photo to us, because it's us very recently having sat at the German bakery. And he obviously was struggling at that time. And it's an amazing photo, because Sujit is sort of the elder, and then all of us sort of almost his children's age. But we never felt like that about Sujit, because really, as Shruti mentioned and others mentioned, he was a friend. We never called him Sujit sir or anything like that. We just called him Sujit, and he seemed to emanate that Sujit feeling about him. He was not a Sujit sir to us, he was Sujit. And we sort of joked, we met at the German bakery, and we called it the General GB, or the General Body, which is where the main decisions of the PMC happen. And at the local level, we're working on sustainable transport, walking, cycling, bus issues, and as Ashok mentioned, parking policy. And we have Shivani and Purnima and Janvi and Aditya, who's being also helping with some of the street design work that Prasanna talked about. So it's a family of people, and even those who have been with Parisar and have gone on, have continued to work on issues like that. And so while we are terribly saddened by his departure, as many have mentioned, it strengthens our resolve to take forward the work and the vision of the founders of Parisar, not only in the field of mobility. I know that's where we've been focusing, but really any issue that has the potential to shape our futures, both locally and globally, be it climate change or other issues, and committing to the ideals of integrity in work that we do, scientific thinking, that is something that people mentioned, evidence-based approach, and perseverance, and excellence in the work that we do. We have to take great pride in everything that we put out. Everything that we say has to be perfect. And Sujit brought that element in because of his design background. He would hate it when we didn't align things, or we didn't, put the punctuation right. But I think it's that holding yourself to high standards of excellence that I think we in Parisar really believe in. And so we hope to get all the continued love and support of all the well-wishers as we go forward. This is another film, and then there are some messages that I want to allow our Parisar staff to read out.
हॅलो. सो परिसरमधल्या लोकांना मी सगळ्यांना सांगितलं की सुजित सरांबद्दल थोडंसं तुम्हाला लिहायचं असेल तर लिहून द्या. प्लीज राईट अ फ्यू लाईन्स सो दॅट वी कॅन रीड इट ओव्हर हिअर सो दॅट वी हॅव अ कलेक्टिव्ह ऑफ वॉट परिसर रिअली फेल्ट अबाउट हिम. And whoever has written, it was really hard for them to write 4 lines because that's just not possible. So people have shared their things with me and I've just taken excerpts because there's no time. But before that, we also have a message from Kiran Moghe, which I'll read and then I'll proceed to the Parisar members. माझा प्रिय मित्र सुजित. माझा प्रिय मित्र सुजितच्या आदरांजली सभेसाठी मी काही व्यक्तिगत कारणास्तव स्वतः उपस्थित राहू शकत नाही. त्याबद्दल मनापासून दिलगिरी व्यक्त करते. सुजित आणि माझे संबंध व्यक्तिगत आणि राजकीय दोन्ही पातळींवर होते. पण ओळख आणि सुरुवात कौटुंबिक लग्न नात्यातून झाल्यामुळे सभेचा शिष्टाचार मोडून त्याच्याबद्दल सवयीप्रमाणे अरेतुरेची भाषा वापरणार आहे. समाजवादी पठडीतल्या माणसाला कम्युनिस्टांची टिंगल करण्याची सवय त्यालाही होती. त्यामुळे भेट झाली की त्याच्या नेहमीच्या पद्धतीने जोरात हसून तो एखादी खास कॉमेंट करायचाच. पण त्यात अनादर कधीच नव्हता. किंबहुना त्याच्या पर्यावरणवादी भूमिकेत कष्टकरी, दुर्बल, वंचित समूह आणि त्यातही स्त्रिया आणि लहान मुले नेहमीच केंद्रस्थानी होते आणि मला हे त्याचं वैशिष्ट्य वाटते. बऱ्याच वेळा पर्यावरणाच्या प्रश्नावर काम करणाऱ्या कार्यकर्त्यांची मध्यमवर्गीय म्हणून हेटाई होते. पण सुजितच्या मांडणीतून रस्ते, फुटपाथ, रस्त्यावरचे दिवे, बसेस, बसस्टॉप, ट्रॅफिक, प्रदूषण असे सामान्य माणसांचे विषय असायचे. शहरी विकास हा शेवटच्या कष्टकरी माणसाच्या दृष्टिकोनातून व्हायला हवे आणि स्वच्छ पाणी, हवा आणि वातावरण यावर सर्वांचा समान अधिकार आहे याबद्दल तो खूप ठाम आणि स्पष्ट होता. आणि म्हणून कौटुंबिक नात्याच्या पलीकडे जाऊन आम्ही कार्यकर्ते त्या पातळीवर नेहमीच एकमेकांशी संवाद साधत होतो, अगदी शेवटपर्यंत. मला आठवतंय जेमतेम 2 महिन्यांपूर्वी एका मीटिंगसाठी मी परिसरच्या ऑफिसवर गेले होते. रणजितने मला स्थळ ठरवताना विचारले आणि मी त्याला परिसर सांगितले. तेव्हा त्याचे प्रमुख कारण हेच होते की सुजितला भेटता येईल. त्या बैठकीत तो अपेक्षित नसताना देखील आला, बसला, शांतपणे चर्चा ऐकली आणि नंतर आम्ही गप्पा मारल्या आणि मी आनंदात घरी परतले. आज त्याच्या अशाच खूप आठवणी दाटून येत आहेत. त्या आवर्जून मांडावंसं वाटतो. त्यात कष्टकरी चळवळ आणि पर्यावरण रक्षणाची चळवळ यांना अजूनही खूप सांध्याची गरज आहे. काही प्रमाणात पुणे शहरात कार्यरत असलेल्या संस्था, संघटना यांनी ते केले आहे आणि परिसर, CE याचा त्यात मोठा वाटा आहे. सुजितच्या दृष्टिकोनामुळे हे अंतर काही प्रमाणात कापले गेले होते आणि माझ्यासारख्या कार्यकर्तीला या प्रश्नाबद्दल अधिक संवेदनशील पद्धतीने विचार करायला त्याने भाग पाडले. पण अजूनही यात खूप काम करण्याची गरज आणि संधी आहे. सामान्य लोकांच्या गरजा केंद्रस्थानी ठेवून सृष्टीचा समतोल राखणाऱ्या विकास वाटा या कष्टकरी आणि पर्यावरणवादी दोन्ही चळवळींचे उद्दिष्ट असायला हवे. किंबहुना एकमेकांच्या शिवाय त्या विकसित करणे शक्यच नाही. सुजितचा हा विचार आपण पुढे घेऊन जाणे हीच त्याला आदरांजली असेल. धन्यवाद. आता मी परिसरचे जे टीम मेंबर्स आहेत त्यांचे मेसेजेस वाचीन. पहिला आहे सूरज याचा. जसं रणजित सर म्हणले, आय थिंक परिसर फॅमिली, देर आर अ लॉट ऑफ पीपल हू आर नॉट इन परिसर एनी लॉंगर बट दे आर स्टील पार्ट ऑफ आर फॅमिली. सो सूरज इज वन ऑफ देम. सुजित सरांना नवनवीन गोष्टी शिकायला फार आवडायच्या. मग त्या टेक्नॉलॉजी संदर्भात असो अथवा कुठल्या एखाद्या व्यक्तीबद्दल असो. झूमवरती मीटिंग कशी शेड्यूल करायची, चालू मीटिंगमध्ये पोल कसा वापरायचा, गुगलवरती गुगल फॉर्मपासून तर गुगलवरती आपण एखादा पोल करायचा झाल्यास तो कसा करता येईल, ॲनिमेशनबद्दल अनेक बारीक सारीक गोष्टी ते विचारत असायचे. आणि बऱ्याचदा ते फक्त विचारायचे नाहीत तर ते त्यांच्या घरी खाली जो पर्सनल कम्प्युटर आहे तिथे मला बोलावून ते करायला दाखवायला सांगायचे. आणि ते एकदा करून दाखवल्यानंतर ते आता मी करून बघतो आणि ते कन्फर्म झाल्यावर ओके मला जमतंय असं म्हणायचे आणि त्यांना फार आनंद व्हायचा. अशा प्रकारच्या नवनवीन गोष्टी शिकायला सुजित सरांना अगदी मनापासून आवडायचं. मला ते नेहमी छोट्या छोट्या गोष्टींसाठी खूप अप्रिशिएट करायचे, प्रोत्साहन द्यायचे. त्यामुळे एखादे काम व्यवस्थित येत नसलं तरी ते काम करण्याचा आत्मविश्वास यायचा. सुजित सर हे खूप फ्रेंडली होते, मित्राप्रमाणे होते आणि त्यांनी मला अशी कधीच जाणीव होऊ दिली नाही की ते माझे बॉस आहेत. ते नेहमी मला फोन करायचे आणि माझे हालचाल विचारायचे. शेवटी एवढेच सांगेन की मी माझा खूप चांगला आणि अनुभवी मित्र गमावला. सुजित सर माझ्या नेहमी स्मरणात राहतील. The next message is from Swati, who's again part of the Parisar family, though she's not in Parisar any longer. My days during the initial 3 years at Parisar used to start with mostly the same scene. Sujit sir sitting on the edge of the sofa, facing the door, surrounded by several newspapers and welcoming everyone who entered the office with a heartwarming smile. The same smile with which all at Parisar were advised by him to welcome the blooming possibilities within them. He had a knack of seeing those capabilities within us, even as we didn't, and was always there to provide electrifying batteries of support, catapulting us to a higher plane of self-realization. The moment he identified the reader and writer in me, he ensured that opportunities at work catered to that side of me. For him, consistency and hard work trumped perfection. For us, that meant plenty of room to experiment, learn, fail, and fall, with the knowledge that we will always be supported by both him and Ranjit sir in getting right up and dusting ourselves off. And like that, he identified the storyteller in Madhura and Aditya, the artist in Shweta and Priya, the writer in Sandeep, the orator and conversationalist in Sharmila, and the inventor in Suraj. The next message is from Mr. Damodar Shanbag, who looks after the administration at Parisar, and over the last many years, I think their conversations have moved much, much beyond just accounts and checks and signatures, and it was really wonderful. He is not here today, but this is his message. आठवणी आठवून सांगता येत नाहीत, त्यात रमता येतं. परिसर ही संस्था जरी असली तरी सुजित सरांचं हे कुटुंबच आहे. परिसरमधील सर्वांचीच ते काळजी घेत असे. परिसरमध्ये नवीन सदस्य आला की त्यांच्यापर्यंत संस्थेची उद्दिष्ट त्याला समजतील, त्याच्यात ती रुजतील, त्याच्या संकल्पना दृढ होतील याकडे त्यांचे लक्ष असे. शहरी वाहतूक, पर्यावरण, प्रिंटिंग, फोटोग्राफी, पेंटिंग, सिनेमा, संगीत सर्वच क्षेत्रात त्यांचा वावर होता. पर्यावरण व त्याचे नागरिक व शहरावर होणारे परिणाम या विषयावर सखोल अभ्यास होता. या विषयावर महानगरपालिकेतील अधिकारी, नगरसेवक त्यांचे मत विचारात घेत व शहरातील समस्या सोडविण्यासाठी उपयोग करीत. शहरातील BRT, सार्वजनिक वाहतूक व्यवस्था बळकट व सक्षम करण्यात त्यांचा मोठा वाटा आहे. राज्य व देशस्तरावरील अनेक अधिकारी व नेते यांचा त्यांच्याबरोबर पर्यावरण, सार्वजनिक वाहतूक याविषयी संवाद होत असे. सुजित सरांचा आवाज मोठा होता व त्यांचा ठसा त्यांच्या कार्यात पुणे शहराच्या जडणघडणीत दिसून येतो. त्यांच्या अथक प्रयत्नांनी पुण्याचे वैभव, टेकड्या, ऐतिहासिक स्थळं जतन करण्यात दिलेलं योगदान महत्त्वपूर्ण आहे. त्यांच्याकडून प्रेरणा घेऊन त्यांचे कार्य पुढे नेतील असे अनेक कार्यकर्ते आज पुणे व देशात तयार झाले आहेत. त्यांचे कार्य पुढे असेच सुरू राहील व त्यांच्या स्वप्नांना पूर्ती येईल हे निश्चित. I have another message from Madhura, which I'll read out. This is the second last message and then we'll move on to the next. From the day I joined Parisar to a few weeks back when I met him, the spark in his eyes and happiness of seeing me was the same. The most curious, humble, passionate, warm, loving, childlike, and caring individual I have ever met. Though I met him as a part of work, for him, personal and professional discussions were the same. He took me to meetings, encouraged me to write my views on mobility, trusted and respected my opinions, and was a very important critic. From introducing me to Louis Armstrong's jazz, abstract art, lessons on photography, and watching Helvetica together, to him writing on the LinkedIn profile that he had to let me go since I got married and moved to Bangalore, Sujit sir was a package full of fun. But this connection did not end with my job at Parisar. He often called, and at times when I felt low that things were not working on the work front, he would share some stories from his experiences and encourage me to become more optimistic. He inspired, guided, loved me like no other. A friend, a philosopher, and a guide in the truest sense. I will miss our long calls with Sujit sir starting. You haven't called me since long. What are you busy with? I can hear this in Marathi. काय चाललंय तुझं असं त्यांचं ते असायचं नेहमी. And I just can't stop feeling like talking to you now. We'll miss you until we meet again. Moving on to the last message, and I kept this message towards the end because it ends with some beautiful lines from a very famous jazz song. This is written by Sharmila for Sujit. A rainbow, a bubble, a dream, a flash of lightning, such is the transience of life, and yet only a few humans can live lifetimes in that span. You, dear Sujit, are amongst those rare gems who lived your life well, fully. I find Sujit in the words of the song, What a Wonderful World. I see trees of green, red roses too. I see them bloom for me and you. And I think to myself, what a wonderful world. And adding a verse here as my idea of Sujit's vision of an ideal people-friendly space, I see roads lined with trees, people strumming guitars with songs on their lips, children cycling by freely, grandmothers alighting from buses happily. And I think to myself, what a wonderful world. Thank you. I think we would now end the program with his daughters singing a song as a vote of thanks for all of you who have come here to share and really, relive Sujit sir. Request Lara and Amrita Dai to please.
मी काही फॉर्मल वोट ऑफ थँक्स किंवा असं काही म्हणणार नाही आहे. मला मात्र आत्ता इतक्या सगळ्या लोकांनी म्हणजे इतकं भरभरून बाबाबद्दल बोलणं केलं आणि किती वेगवेगळ्या प्रकारे त्यांनी इतक्या सगळ्या लोकांच्या आयुष्याला स्पर्श केला होता ते सगळं ऐकताना खरंच खूप कृतज्ञ मात्र नक्की वाटतं आहे. बाबाच्या खूप वेगवेगळ्या ॲस्पेक्ट्सबद्दल म्हणजे खूपच आपण आत्ता ऐकलं, पर्यावरण, सामाजिक सामाजिक प्रश्नांमधली त्याची इन्व्हॉल्वमेंट, कला, सौंदर्य, ह्या सगळ्याबद्दल आपण वेगवेगळ्या ॲस्पेक्ट्सबद्दल ऐकलं. त्याच्यातल्या अजून एका ॲस्पेक्टबद्दल मला आज थोडंसं 2 वाक्य बोलावी असं वाटलं की ते म्हणजे त्याच्या सगळ्या व्यक्तिमत्वाला एक असं स्पिरिच्युअल डायमेन्शन पण होती आणि त्याच्या आईबाबांमुळे संत साहित्य आणि असं घरी तर होतंच, शिवाय जे कृष्णमूर्तींचं पण फॅमिलीमुळे आणि शाळेमुळे एक मोठं एक्सपोजर त्याला होतं आणि त्याच्या व्यक्तिमत्वाचा ते एक मोठा भाग होता. आणि जे कृष्णमूर्तींचं टॉक्स त्यांनी पुष्कळ ऐकलेले होते किंवा पुस्तकं वाचली होती. तर मला असं वाटतं म्हणजे त्याच्याबद्दल तो असं खूप बोलायचा नाही, पण कुठेतरी हे सगळं त्यांनी आत्मसात केलं होतं आणि म्हणूनच खूप लोकांच्या बोलण्यामध्ये जे आलं की एक डिटॅच्ड इन्व्हॉल्वमेंट अशी त्याची होती की तो सगळं कामं त्यांनी खूप पॅशनेटली आणि भरभरून केली, पण तरी त्याचं ओझं घेतलं नाही आणि असा तो एक फ्री जगला. तर ह्या कारणामुळे ते असावं असं मला वाटतं. आणि म्हणजे कृष्णमूर्तींचा एक कोट आहे की लर्निंग इज अ मोमेंट नॉट अँकर्ड इन नॉलेज. तर ह्या संदर्भात तो माझ्या आयुष्याच्या वेगवेगळ्या टप्प्यावर बरेचदा बोललेला आहे. ते मला आठवलं की तो मला सांगायचा की रोज एक 5 मिनटं 10 मिनटं नुसतं शांत बसत जा आणि आपल्या मनात येणारे विचार बघ, म्हणजे जस्ट विथ कम्प्लिटली नॉन जजमेंटल पण क्युरिओसिटीने असे तुझे मनातले विचार ऑब्झर्व करत जा आणि बस तेवढंच करायचं, जास्ती एफर्टफुली काही करायचं नाही. पण हे असं करण्यामधनं हळूहळू एकतर तुमची स्वतःशी जास्त ओळख होते आणि तुम्ही स्वतःला जास्ती स्वीकारता आणि हे सगळे थॉट्स ऑब्झर्व करता करता मधनंच कधीतरी एकदम काही इश्यूजबद्दल किंवा तुमच्या प्रॉब्लेम्सबद्दल तुम्हाला अचानक खूप लख्ख अशी क्लॅरिटी येते आणि मग ती जेव्हा आतून येते म्हणजे दॅट इज युअर मोमेंट ऑफ लर्निंग. आणि ती जेव्हा खरी आतून क्लॅरिटी येते तेव्हा खरंच तो चेंज तत्क्षणी होतो, मग तुम्हाला त्याच्याबद्दल कष्ट घ्यावे लागत नाहीत. तर हे मला म्हणजे मी कॉलेजमध्ये असल्यापासून आत्तापर्यंत असं वेगवेगळ्या प्रसंगी त्यांनी माझ्याबरोबर असं बसून हा डायलॉग केलेला मला आत्ता आठवतो आहे. तर अशा आपल्या मनाबद्दलचं एक प्रार्थना वजा काही ओळी आहेत तर त्या मला आज म्हणावशा वाटत आहेत. आणि त्याच्यामध्ये जे म्हणलेलं आहे मनाबद्दल की एक मनाचा निर्मळपणा, निरागसपणा, तेजस्वीपणा, कणखरपणा, ठामपणा आणि निर्भयपणा आणि तरी त्याच्या जोडीला एक संवेदनशीलता, अशा अनेक गोष्टी बाबाच्या पण व्यक्तिमत्वामध्ये होत्या असं मला वाटतं. तर त्या एक छोटंसं प्रार्थना वजा गाणं आहे ते मी आता म्हणणार आहे. पानी सा निर्मल हो मेरा मन, मेरा मन। धरती सा अविचल हो मेरा मन, मेरा मन। सूरज सा तेजस हो मेरा मन, मेरा मन। चंदा सा शीतल हो मेरा मन, मेरा मन। पानी सा निर्मल हो मेरा मन, मेरा मन। धुंधलाई आंखें जब भरमाया चित्त है, समझे ना मन को जब सत्य या सत्य है। चंचलता मोह से दूर रहे, अपने ही द्रोह से दूर रहे। करुणामय निर्भय हो मेरा मन, मेरा मन। पानी सा निर्मल हो मेरा मन, मेरा मन। धरती सा अविचल हो मेरा